Welcome to Self-Perfected.
Nice.
What's up, people?
We're hey, guess what? It is national for the very first time, Trans Visibility Day, where you can actually see Christ being
Whoa.
trans.
Whoa. How did that work? Is that what they call it? Visibility Day? Trans visibility?
Because I'm pretty sure Biden just wanted to see the transmutation. That's what it was. He was like, how does this work? Because
I thought Biden had a weird fetish and was like one of the,
I don't
I'm a
follow.
little offended about all of these things you guys are saying.
What?
I'm a little offended by all of this.
Oh, you're offended.
Yes.
That's good, Cameron. That's really our goal with this podcast, is to see how triggered we can get Cameron. I have like a little meter in the corner. You can tell when he gets worked up.
Yeah.
It's starting to get borderline anti-Semitic in here, guys.
Only starting?
Like anytime
Yeah, I
you
thought we were on a
about
tear
Jesus.
from last week.
Only starting? Do you even know the definition of anti-Semitic?
Does anyone?
Yeah, I think it changed recently.
I think it transmutates.
Dude. Okay, so it's really crazy all the things that have been going on this past week. I listened to a 4-hour conversation of a bunch of like conservatives going back and forth with like, is this anti-Semitic? Is this no, it can't be. This is, that whole thing. It's been really interesting with, I guess it started with Candace Owens getting fired. And then from there, just how everyone's just exposed themselves is what I would say.
In what way? How do you say that?
Because you're seeing a lot more of people identifying where they stand on this topic. And not only that, you're seeing as well, it's funny, I was bringing this up to Nina yesterday at our clubhouse about like the whole debate behind like Christ is King, is it anti-Semitic to say that, etc. And she was like, this conversation is stupid. Like they're all arguing about something that's make-believe. Like exactly.
There we go.
But it's funny because it's like, I mean, it would be like everyone who watches a movie and then people arguing over this movie and how important it is to their life, and like you can't say that this is what happened in the movie. Like you can't interpret that scene.
Luke Skywalker is king.
Yeah, right.
Like arguing about the canon of Star Wars versus the books versus like what's the actual
right. It's like no. I read the original director's cut, and like no, don't you know they changed that? Or it'd be like arguing about the Matrix. Like, well, I heard in the original Matrix they weren't supposed to be batteries. They were supposed to be like these systems, but people couldn't understand that, so they had to edit it. And like, who gives a fuck? It's a fucking movie, right? Like, how is it affecting your life, actually? But the reality
Except
is,
for it's accepting this bullshit system. That's really how it's affecting your life.
yeah, it's really affecting everybody's life a lot. How much context do we want to give to like everything that's been going on, and then like go in on it? Okay.
I'm just watching Mitch.
A good amount.
Which is like, I need context, guys.
So I see all the stuff you guys post in the chat, right? I saw that there was a new
Well, let me ask you a question real quick. If we weren't sending that stuff to you, would you even be aware of it?
I'll scan YouTube like twice a week, and because I've have liked and engaged with the other stuff you sent me, I get exposed to a lot of that.
Okay.
But I would say like it doesn't pop up on my Facebook feed.
Right.
Anywhere
so,
where
like, I think the average person, literally, if you talked about Candace Owens got fired, maybe the average person would know, like, oh, well, CNN. Yeah, I remember CNN said that because she's like anti-Semitic and all this stuff. And then like their only knowledge would be knowing that she's just like this like rabid anti-Semite, and like, oh, she got exposed, and like that would be it. Yeah, but I'm not saying she isn't. I'm not saying she is. I mean, It's like, according to the definition of anti-Semitic, it's like the way it's being defined now, everyone is, it's like
Right.
how you define the word, you can't be like, oh, that's not anti-Semitic. Like, I mean, maybe we should give a little context, because otherwise it's like,
Definitely give some context as to, like, why this is so important, because I think people hear anti-Semitic and they just gloss over.
Yeah,
Like, oh, isn't that like Nazis?
just based on Mitchell's facial expressions.
I'm like the average person here, okay, guys. You guys are like the extremists.
I'm gonna be I'm gonna be
come on.
ChatGPT, but I'm gonna
Okay.
predict the next word based on your facial expression of like what needs to be said next. So like when I see you
Okay.
can
Okay.
like give more context. When I see you nodding, then I kind of
Yeah,
okay. All right.
Anti-Semitic.
he's nodding, so I guess we don't need that much
But okay, let
context.
me start with this. This is a crazy thing. Rick, you watched that thing I sent
Yeah, watch. Yeah,
from the Unwoke thing or whatever.
yeah.
And do you remember where the guy was from? His name's like Dorian Bell. Do you remember what
Oh,
university?
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. University of like California or some California
It was like
university.
UC
Yeah,
something, maybe. Yeah. Anyway, some professor, and he was like giving some lecture. I don't really know much of the context about what anything other than just the clips that I saw. It was like a 45-minute lecture or seminar or something. But he was well, I want to hear what you think about it first, Drake. Like maybe you
sure.
summarize it and then I'll add if I
Yeah, yeah,
see.
yeah. Okay, so he starts speaking, and it was just so interesting because he's like, um, we're watching somebody else watch him give this speech, but he's talking about anti-Semitism and post-anti-Semitism, right? And that's a phrase that this is new to me, right? Post-anti-Semitism. But he was basically saying how um, it is still anti-Semitic if you're against illegal immigration. It is still anti-Semitic because it plays on a trope that comes from basically Jewish stories, which to me was just like, whoa, like he's basically saying like, okay, oh yeah, also because it's going against this globalist agenda, which is tied in with this conservative, the way that conservatives kind of frame globalists, the elite, it's all like anti-Semitism. And so whether people realize it or not, whether you realize that you're participating in this or not, it's anti-Semitic if you are against black or brown people or illegal immigration essentially, or the movement of people from one country to another, and having these borders. That's anti-Semitic. So he's making the case for that. And then on top of that, he's making the case of like, because it plays on these tropes of like the wandering Jew. If you're against Latinx, then or if you're against like critical race theory or critical theory at all, like or against like LGBTQ, being taught in schools, any of those things, he's like, because the way that the alt-right conservatives think about it, what their attack on this is, which is, like he's making these like offhand comments of like it's so ridiculous, right? But he's basically saying like what they're characterizing it as: you teach Latinx in schools, then kids grow up and they feel like they don't need to have borders. Or you teach, LGBTQ in school and kids grow up and they no longer want to reproduce. And like he's basically saying like, here's the purpose of teaching these things, right?
It's like it's like if I never use the term gaslighting just because I think it's so overused, but this is a perfect example of actual gaslighting where he's explaining all the stuff that's so obvious to everybody and then making it seem like, oh no, it's something that's just happening organically and it makes sense, and it's like almost like an evolutionary force that then it's like, oh yes, and then LGBTQ in schools and all that kind of stuff, that's just progress. That's not anything nefarious, that's not any agendas, that's not anyone pushing that for anything to destabilize anything or to control. It's like as if it's just this organic natural progress evolutionary thing that's occurring, that why would you even question it? Of course it makes sense, like, and it's good. Like there's this implicit assumption that it's just fine. It's like you can see, like, I place value on A, B, C, and D. So then if anyone who questions it, the only reason they could be questioning is because they're stuck in the past, racist, they hate people, they're afraid of things that are different than them. there's really nothing at all wrong with these A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
It was so obvious. That was the implicit assumption of what the guy was saying. Okay, so I
So
like when Drake
therefore,
breaks it down.
if you're against any of those things, like you're against Latinx, anti-Semitic. You're against LGBTQ, anti-Semitic.
Okay, but on the surface, that sounds ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Why?
Because he even explicitly said whether it includes Jews or not.
Why is that
Right?
ridiculous?
Because anti-Semitism, the way that we understood it for so long, is hate against Jews. Right?
Sure, but why is that ridiculous?
Because he's saying that this has nothing to do with Jews, and yet it's anti-Semitic.
Right, but then, are you seeing the point of his argument though?
The point of his argument is that it's anti-Semitic because it goes against the Jews' agenda, or like it brings up all these stories from the past of Jews, but like
It's
here's
not quite. You're missing something. And I mean, I know you see the point, but like when you listen to that woman that was talking about it, it was like, oh, really? Now you're gonna say that's anti, and like it's missing the subtlety of the guy's argument.
Uh-huh.
What he was arguing was that anti-Semitism, in its essence, is being afraid of someone you perceive as other than you. It's like you have your established culture, you have someone who you perceive as on the outside of that, and they're unwelcome, and they shouldn't even exist because they make you uncomfortable, and you feel it's a threat to the existence of you and your way of life and who you are and your identity, and you perceive them as a threat to that. And in order to maintain your way of life, you have to then put all the attacks onto them.
Okay, but the only reason why that could be called anti-Semitism is because he goes back to like all these stories of like.
Right. But what he was trying to say was that the original expression of this fundamental hating of the quote other was against Jews.
Right.
It's saying that it's essentially taking them as like the like the archetype.
They're
like the archetype.
Victim.
Well, I'm not saying he didn't. I don't think he would say they're the first. It's just they're like the archetype. They're like the symbolic embodiment of, if you want to hate someone who's not like you, that's it.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And so like that's what, in a way, he was arguing anti-Semitism is like it's like the beginning of it. It's like, okay, for example, have you ever listened to punk music?
Sure.
Like straight up punk, right? Like from 1970, or 73 or whatever, right?
Is Sonic Youth punk?
No.
What?
I'm talking
that's not punk.
What's
is Pink Floyd
like
punk?
Sex Pistols.
Velvet Underground. Okay. Pink Floyd's not punk.
What the hell?
What is wrong with you, Drake?
Terrible
Sex
analogy.
Pistols.
I don't know. I don't.
Let me use a different example. Okay, let me use a different example because you guys don't know anything about music history. Okay.
I don't know Sex Pistols.
Now maybe this will help. Okay. Think about like I'm trying to think of an example. Oh man, what Bo Diddley? Do you guys know Bo Diddley?
No,
who is Bo
like
Diddley?
Chuck Berry or some like
old
Chuck
Berry.
Who is that guy?
Okay, Chuck Berry.
Some like old school rock and roll.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Elvis Presley?
Even before that, like old school, like old black dude with a guitar, like it's like almost blues, but it's like basically like the very first like rock and roll that's like super pure form. Okay.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to like Three Doors Down or fucking Nickelback or some shit. Okay, you know what I mean? Or I don't even know if that's considered rock music, but like whatever you would consider rock music today, I don't know what it would be, or like whatever. Okay, they don't seem really related at all.
No.
You see what I mean? But like one is kind of like the very beginning of it, and one is more like this evolved form of it. That's like later in time that you could trace back and be like, you could start explaining how Nickelback has something to do with like fucking Chuck Berry or something, right? And you're like,
sure,
it seems so ridiculous, but then you look at it and you're like, okay, I can see how it's become that, right? So you can see that with music, right? Like that's why I was using the example of punk, because you listen to like punk where it's like 3 chords and it's super high energy and all this stuff, right? But then they have something called post-punk.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that like
and you can see how it uses elements of it, but it kind of takes it further, and it's like a more embracing sound that's like a little bit bigger and kind of evolves in all these different ways. So like Sonic Youth, it's not post-punk, but it's kind of in that same vein, right? Okay. uh, it's kind of like that, where it's like you have some like pure form of something, and then it becomes expanded and goes out from there. So like you take the idea of being afraid of someone who's like coming into your culture and you feel threatened and everything. That's the quote Jew, right? Then you extend that argument, and what he was saying was you can be anti-Semitic without even any Jew being involved in your thinking. Because you can be like, I'm against illegal immigrants because they're coming in. And so like, imagine back in the day, like in the 1600s, I don't know, like whenever, the only people doing that, let's just say hypothetically, was like a Jew coming into like some culture. And then they were like, that was the one point where they were like, get this guy out of here. Like they're not a part of our culture or whatever, right? Today, it's not just them, it's immigrants, it's gays, it's lesbians, it's trans. It's like they're all now the quote Jews. Like, do you see what I'm saying? They're the embodiment of that same fundamental concept.
See, I didn't realize. So, like, I didn't realize as a kid I experienced a lot of anti-Semitism all the time.
Wow, you're so brave, Drake. How is so like how is this different than xenophobia?
I mean, that I don't think it's fundamentally different. That's just
I don't think anybody knows what xenophobia is, but what they know what anti-Semitic is, and they'll accept that.
One is way more charged. The other one's like, fuck, how do I even spell this, right? That's what the average person thought.
Z-E.
Z-I?
I think it's a fear of Zeno's paradox.
See?
Wow, that was fucking advanced.
What is that?
It was the advanced hour.
But what's crazy about all of it? See, so from my perspective, I'm not shocked that they're making the argument. Does that make sense? Where it's like, okay, you're just calling everything anti-Semitic. Now you're saying if you don't like black and brown people, you're come on, even if they're not Jewish. But I can see the point, actually, the logic of what the guy's saying. So he's calling it post-anti-Semitism because it's like, now, but why even frame it like that?
It's really, okay, because my thought goes to like, yeah, but not everybody knows all these stories that you're bringing up of like.
Totally. I'm just saying, like, when you see that reaction over there on one side where they're like, what? Yeah. How they're calling that? And it's But I actually understand the argument. And
but here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. It's like that guy is playing off an assumption of like, yeah, well, everybody knows this is coming from the stories of the Jews.
I don't think he's playing off of that so much as.
Then why frame it that way?
He's an intellectual. He's an academic. And it's like, it'd be like if you were some Shakespearean scholar. You're not assuming everybody understands all of the fucking scholarly work that's been done on Shakespeare. You're writing your piece of it, and you're just drawing on all of that. You don't care if everybody understands. Does that make sense?
Sure, I guess.
You're just following your like little specific point.
But it doesn't make sense in this context of like then the question that you're bringing up of like why frame it then that way of anti-Semitism.
Okay, you know what it's like to me is, do you ever watch like videos of like fashion shows like at a runway and all that, and you're just like, what the fuck are they wearing? It's so, I mean, I'm not talking about the crazy one where it looks like the guy's wearing a giant balloon or something, not that, but like even just like normal fashion, you're like, no one's gonna wear that. Like no one's gonna wear that walking down.
Where the guys look like they haven't ate food and they're on drugs.
Right, but I mean, like even like the clothing, it just seems so weird sometimes. But what happens is that something about it gets morphed and how do I describe it? It's like it
becomes mainstream.
It sets like a sort of new way of looking at it and looking at fashion and the way something can look. And then it starts to become like let's just call it a dumbed down version of that or something, right? Yeah. Or like a mainstream version of that where it has elements of it. So it's like, you know.
So you're saying this guy was like, he was doing his fashion runway show.
Well, what I'm saying is like, he's the intellectual. He's like the fashion designer who the only person wearing the thing he made is the model on the runway. But everybody else is looking at that going, okay, And you can take that, or it's like the scientist doing an experiment that's very specific, and everyone comes in and goes, okay, I can make a headline with that. I can use it for this. And then suddenly it becomes something beyond just what that person was saying. And I'm not defending this academic, because I think
have you ever heard the terms?
He has a political mindset and so forth, an agenda of what he's doing, but he's not speaking in a way for the average person to understand.
Right. Yeah.
Have you ever heard the term spin doctor?
Yeah.
Is that
it's like, a mixture of like Twister and Operation. Those two games together, and you get Spin Doctor.
Well, it's also a band. Going back to my post-punk analogy.
or the other term is like the term zeitgeist. It's like, it sounds like these are the people manipulating what happens with the zeitgeist, so they're able to like put forth this new.
It's not even. I'm not saying it's manipulating. I know I kind of imply that, but what I'm saying, okay, all the critical race theory and all that shit that we have heard about in the mainstream, you're hearing this sort of diluted mainstream consumption version of it. But then you go and you look, oh, this has been like in the academic discussion and circles and so forth for the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years. You see what I'm saying? Like no average person's going to read Michel Foucault. Like they're going to pick it up and like, but that is what's informing all of the stuff that, just as one example, informing all of this stuff. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems like, oh, that's just academic philosophy stuff. A perfect example of it is how many people talk about fucking communism now.
Yeah, everybody.
Marxism and stuff. Like it's all over everywhere, right? But there's an actual book written by Marx that's called the Communist Manifesto, and you can, but no one has read that. No one understands what it said. And I'm not even saying it's being presented.
Yeah.
But people put these things, it's kind of like how movies can shape culture. You know, even though movies are already made for the consumption of the masses, you know what I mean? But like, think about back in the day, art would be done by like the king or somebody would be the patron, and then they would give money and resources to some artist, and they would create shit. But then that would kind of,
oh yeah,
you see what I'm trying to say? It's It's not designed for mass consumption, but it's like impulsing reality with a new idea.
Yeah, for sure.
What I'm saying is this guy's lecture wasn't designed to explain shit to the average person. It was there to inject a new way of looking at shit.
Sounds a lot like fucking Bernard audios.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the point of speaking. Your words actually affect reality.
Yeah.
So people are going to nitpick it and everything. And all I was trying to say is like, it actually makes sense what the guy's saying, the logic of the argument. Now, the interesting thing that's going to happen with it, and I'm not saying this guy's particular lecture, like anybody's listening to it, but it's just an example. This was going on before the Candace Owens thing.
Yeah. Also interesting about that as well is you can tell he's talking to a bunch of other academics.
Of course.
Right. You know, like in his speech, he's like, you know, and of course, what Michel Foucault is going to advance, and Bernard over here, and you know, like, and he's like speaking. His French accent was really good.
But if you were to go right now to Princeton, there's 30 lectures happening, seminars being put on by people who are writing, you know, like studying stuff, researching, writing papers, and then presenting their seminar. So all it is somebody got a fly on the wall view of that because it's on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm not putting the importance on that particular lecture, but it's an example to show where thought is going right now. Do you see what I mean? And so, and the reason I sent that to y'all was to show like, okay, it seems like just a bunch of drama with Candace Owens and the Daily Wire and conservatives fighting with each other. And what's the big deal? Like, who gives a shit kind of thing? Like, okay, they're fighting over anti-Semitism now, whatever. But I'm seeing it as a bigger, it's a part of a much bigger picture that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And do you notice in that video with this academic guy, right? He specifically said so he said the idea of like criticizing some global elite, criticizing the elite, the Davos elite. He specifically said that. And it's interesting because I don't think from his perspective necessarily he's like thinking, oh, I have to go out there and like trick people into like not believe, to like no, oh, they're finding out the truth or something. I don't know. But I think regardless, they're making the argument. It's like, it's a gaslighting. It's like, he said the point of thinking that somehow these elite, like these Davos elite, are control. The way he said it was like controlling the world or the economy, like
he
as if like, do you really come on? Like,
he
go
also
ahead.
brings up like people in their ivory towers, you know, the media, like all he brings up like all the different points of like where control could come from. And he's like, and you know, to think that like, you know, somebody is going to be pushing information through these channels to control people is anti-Semitic, right?
But it's not like it's just a. So what's fascinating to me about it, I guess I'm trying to emphasize this point, is like they're not just going, oh, let's call that anti-Semitic now. It's like they have a very well structured argument as to how it is. Do you see what I'm trying to say? It makes sense. That's the danger of it. And because they can make it make sense, everyone can be like, yeah, we can utilize this. And then so what are they really saying? If you are against the idea, or if you're even participating in this idea that there's some global elites that are working together to control history and to control the economy and so forth, the implicit assumption of what he said was that's not actually happening.
Yeah.
Or even if it is happening, there's nothing wrong with it. And if you think there's something wrong with it, it's actually because you're just participating in this sort of next evolution of the idea of anti-Semitism. You're just, and he said, like, you're, he said, what happens is people start thinking about all that stuff and then they start to fall into anti-Semitism. So it's almost like the gateway drug into anti-Semitism. So he's like, it can go back and forth. Like you could start by hating immigrants. And then you're like, well, the immigrants are actually being let in by all these open border policies. And who's doing that? Oh, this is globalists. Oh, and who are the globalists? Oh, a lot of them are Jews. Oh, so, and then suddenly it's like you're now anti-Semitic when you didn't even start that way. And you see how, and then this anti-Semitism can lead you to the other way. And so he's like trying to show, basically, the way I'm looking at it is, if you question the fucking system as it is, it's not that you're, quote, against Jews per se. It's just that you're participating in the same shit as people who literally just hate Jews.
Yeah.
You see, like, they're trying to equate in the system hating you know, like that sort of that fear people have of like, why don't they want to be labeled anti-Semitic?
Because then you get all your bank accounts taken away from you.
Well,
Everybody, nobody trusts you anymore. You're like,
there's
oh,
that.
you're a
That's
bigot.
obviously at the end of it, but there's like, in terms of the emotional point, it's like, well, I don't want people to think I'm like a Nazi or I like Hitler and all this kind of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like just, oh fuck, like if everybody thought that, I would just be like, oh, it's not good, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And obviously, there's consequences because of that, right? If that happens, so it's like utilizing that emotional pressure on people so that they will not fucking question anything about the system. And then what are they going to fight about?
What can you fight about at this point? It's who's more
You're just
anti-Semitic.
But then it's just like fighting over which is the right God. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like you're not even talking about, even with like, even those people like Nick Fuentes and all those people, like they're kind of he's not necessarily per se trying to be anti-Semitic. He's questioning things that are happening.
Yeah.
He sees, well, there's a certain force that's behind it, but it
Yeah.
still comes from the point of questioning what's happening in the system.
Right.
He might have his own ideas about how it should be or whatever, but then what happens is the whole conversation gets derailed over like, oh, you're attacking me for believing in my God and you don't believe in the right God and you believe in this God. And it becomes like this argument over something like that. Whoever said like, it's not even real. It's like make believe.
Right. Right.
well, Cameron, talk about the whatever that bill, if it was passed with Governor Abbott in Texas.
Well, hang on.
Like,
I think before that, we should talk about the that whole conversation that was had, because like that conversation I think gives a lot of context to like, okay, Candace Owens getting fired, right? Why'd she get fired? Daily Wire didn't say, you know, but
It
it's
seems pretty clear to me now why.
yeah, because
I mean, not necessarily the motivation of the actual why it happened, but like the reasoning as to why she
yeah,
was fired.
definitely because she's anti-Semitic is the
Well, no, but
reason.
specifically it was the Christ is King stuff.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
not as simple as she said Christ is King and they're like, that's anti Semitic. It was more like the whole bigger picture of how that is being used. And really, I think what it's come down to is now you're starting to have this war between Christians and Jews.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating about it is the whole thing is starting to come to the surface because you have Israel in Palestine.
Yeah.
Because none of this was happening until the October 7th thing, Israel, Palestine, that whole thing resurfaced. And now suddenly you've got like, and I mean, for anybody, it's challenging because we're talking about stuff that's happening in the world.
Yeah.
And it might seem like, for some people, it might seem like such a small insular thing, but that's probably because one, most people are just going on with their daily lives, surviving, going to work, doing shit that they're not really having any effect on anything. They're just going along with the flow. That's it. Okay.
Or looking to have any effect on it.
Right. So then, but then even then, let's say you're like, no, I want to make a difference and all this stuff, right? The only information that you're gonna be exposed to in a deliberate way by the system is just what's in the media, which is designed to fucking control your thoughts.
Right.
And then even obviously with YouTube, you have algorithms.
Yeah, even it's so interesting because even somebody who's sharing the news with you, they're going to put their comments on it. And specifically, if they're in the system, like they're in a major news network or whatever, they're going to put their comments that are of the system. And so it was interesting because they said after they fired Candace Owens or during the firing of Candace Owens, they had a whole town hall that was basically like, here are the company's points. This is what you are expected to.
Not a public thing, a private,
no, no,
internal
like
company
within the company.
Apparently.
Yeah, allegedly, they had a town hall that was like basically like, here's what you're supposed to believe, and this person does not believe that, and so we're getting rid of her, right? And it was basically, you can't say Christ is king because that's anti-Semitic. And I don't remember all the other
I think that's
points.
kind of simplifying it, saying you can't say Christ is king. I think it's like, I think their argument makes sense from the perspective they're saying it's like you're kind of trying to quote weaponize the words and like use it as a way of like attacking somebody, right? I'm not saying I agree that
Yeah.
it's that's their argument.
Oh, we're losing Cam. Yeah. No, he's right. They're weaponizing these words or whatever, or at least that's their argument, is that, hey, you're using these words to attack other people. And uh I I see that. I do see that, but also from the perspective of the people who are saying it, from a lot of those people, their argument is, well, if I just say a true thing, that doesn't make it a bad thing, right? So, if I say 2 + 2 = 4 and you get offended by that, like, does that make me an offender?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I agree with it.
Right. I know.
That's the argument they're making.
I know.
Right?
I know.
But it's interesting because Jeremy Bourne made that tweet where he said he's the CEO of Daily Wire, right? And he made this point of like, how can saying and Christ is king be anti-Semitic? He's like, it's not per se anti-Semitic.
It was a good argument. I'll give him that.
Well, is it a good argument?
It was persuasive. It was a persuasive.
But again, yeah, you can understand it. It was good from that perspective. But what he said was, it's not per se. Just like a shovel is not a murder weapon, but it can be used to murder somebody, right?
Right.
Okay. That's obviously true. But then you go, therefore, I can say Christ is king in a way that's anti-Semitic.
Right. And that part is like, that was a kind of a jump there.
Well, the jump is a weapon that you murder somebody with is not the same thing as using words.
Right.
And you're trying to make the equivalency of using these words as a violent act.
Okay, what's so interesting?
And then also, hold on, just real quick. Getting this upset over some words that someone said.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you trace it all back, where did it start?
From a war, actually.
From Candace Owens saying, I feel sad when Palestinian children die.
Yeah.
And have you heard any of those people on the side of like getting rid of Candace Owens express any fucking sympathy or sadness over any whether you're on the side of Israel or not, dude? Because I heard a fucking good argument, man. Did I send you guys that one from Scott Ritter?
No.
Man, I'll just explain this real quick. It's pretty interesting because it kind of had to take a while to sink in, but like he was on some podcast with some Muslim guys, right? You know who Scott Ritter is? He was the former UN's weapons inspector during like the Iraq, weapons of mass destruction era and all that. And he's kind of since then become almost like a whistleblower in a way of like exposing and having his political opinion. So he was like kind of like, hey, I was a weapons inspector. Let me tell you what was really going on, kind of thing.
Yeah, there are no weapons of mass destruction.
Become very popular on some circles of like, kind of exposing things behind the scene in a way. So anyways, you can look him up. He's an interesting guy, but he was saying from a strategic perspective what Hamas did on October 7th. Okay. So let's assume there was an attack, and let's assume it was, a lot of the stuff has been debunked. Like, even the stuff that rabbi was saying to Candace Owens in that interview of like, well, this girl was raped on the corpse of her boyfriend and all. It's like a lot of that stuff has been debunked from the perspective of, okay, let's go talk to the person who said that. Let's follow up. Where did it happen? Like you actually do the investigation, and then the person like walks it back and was like, well, maybe it wasn't over there because that person was never found, and then it just falls apart. Like anybody can say anything. But then to take that and to use it as a justification, especially in an argument with somebody, it's like, do you know what I mean? It'd be like if I was talking to you and I was like, I don't want you to ever see Jim again, right? And you're like, why not? Like, because Jim killed a guy. And you're like, oh fuck, dude. Okay, well, I'm not going to talk to Jim anymore.
Yeah.
You're like, but he's such a nice guy, and I spent a lot of time with him. We worked together, and I'm like, no, you can't because he killed somebody. And you're like, okay. And then you find out like, well, when? You're like, well, I don't know. Like, I know it happened, and then you start finding out like, I don't really have any evidence. I just said it. Yeah. And you say like, it seems like, well, why does it matter? It's because I used that to try to influence you to do something.
Right.
So what does it matter if they killed babies or didn't kill babies? It still was a terrible thing. It's like, well, then why did you say that they did? Right. And why did you amplify that? And why did you promote that? And like, don't you think the media knows by this point? Don't you think they know when they amplify a story, it's going to have an effect on people?
Of course.
Do you think it's just like, oh, we're just telling you what's happening? Oh, somebody said this, and we're going to tell you about it because someone said it. And no, they're specifically like every news station is saying the beheaded babies thing is happening. Why? Because somebody or something is like, this needs to be put into people's minds so that some effect can happen.
Yeah.
To think that like they don't know the effect is just total bullshit, right?
Yeah.
So let me go back. So Scott Ritter was saying, okay, check this out. I think it's a really interesting argument. He said October 6th, okay, the day before this attack, right, by Hamas. See, now for myself, I'll speak for myself. I've known about the whole Palestine thing for a while. Like probably I really started questioning it, I would say maybe like, if I had to guess, like maybe like 10 years ago or something. I started really looking into all that. And like, some things Bernard had mentioned too, of like what's going on in Palestine. I was just like, huh. And looking into it, and you're like, oh, fuck, wow, this is a pretty fucked up situation.
Yeah.
And then obviously everyone else in the world has been aware of it. I've always been aware of that, but always from the perspective of, yeah, it's just some little fight they're having there. I didn't really know what was going on. So I started looking into it, and you start seeing like, it's a pretty fucked up situation, right? Okay. So anyways, so everyone's always known that there's always been conflict happening, and there's always been these things like, from your perspective, right? Growing up in this world, you've always been aware of things happening there, right?
Yeah.
There would be some fighting, and then there'd be like a ceasefire, and then it'd be like they're trying to work on peace, and then it just wouldn't work, and you can't make it work, and then there'd be some fighting again, and then there'd be like a ceasefire. That was always constantly happening throughout our experience living in this world, right? It was always kind of in the background, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, but on October 6th, Scott Ritter's making this point that on October 6th, the day before, so the background context is there's some economic corridor thing that's planned to go from like India through like the UAE or something, through Israel, through Turkey, and it's like some kind of economic corridor or something that's going to like link all this stuff, and it's like a big deal. Okay. And he's like, it's going to go through the state of Israel, right?
Link in what way?
In the sense of it's like some kind of, in the same sense, like a pipeline going through a bunch of countries is a big deal. And like all of them need to cooperate, and it's going to like make certain trade happen. So some kind of, I don't know the full context, but some kind of economic corridor is going through that area. And I think that probably has a lot to do with why Trump and Jared Kushner and them were doing all the peace deals and stuff with like between the Arabs and the Jews and Israel and all that. And it's like, And I think it had to do with all of that. It's like they're trying to get some economic shit happening. So it's like you
Gotcha.
got everybody on the same page. I think those are connected somehow. But anyways,
Yeah.
it was apparently this big, and make it look it up. It's like some economic corridor thing that was going to go, that's going through there, right? And he was like, in all of the discussions about it, it was always about, okay, and it's going to go through the state of Israel. He was like, it was like almost like everyone was just totally forgetting about the whole, but what about the state of Palestine? Is that going to be a thing or not? And he was like, the conversation had kind of moved on in the world from that. And it was like, and anyway, so we're going to put this corridor through the state of Israel. And it was like, yeah, but what about the Palestinian thing? It's like everyone had moved on from it in the world. It's like, yeah, okay. And he said, so the way he explained the strategy of it was Hamas, what they did, okay, so if you go back and you look, every time there's been some sort of attack by Hamas, Israel has always done like this sort of overreaction to it, where it's like they do collective punishment because they go in there, they can't get the guys that did it. And then it's like they get frustrated. He gave an example where they did it in like Lebanon or something, right? Where eventually they just like started like bombing some neighborhood, and it was just like a collective punishment, like fuck you, get frustrated, right? And then they just and so he's like, Hamas knew that would happen, so they're like, hey, everyone's kind of moving on. It's kind of like a kid throwing a tantrum. It's like everyone's moving on. How can like what? How can I get the attention back on this topic?
Yeah.
He's like, they knew that they're gonna have people killed. Like Israel's gonna over respond and they're gonna kill civilians and stuff. And they know that. But it's like, but they're basically a necessary sacrifice in a way, right?
Sure.
But because they knew that Israel would over respond and it would shift the world, because it would be over. It's like if we did something so big, so coordinated, the response will be huge, and people will be like, "No, what the fuck, Israel? What are you doing?" Right? And then it would turn the tide, and the conversation would come back to like, we need to work something out with the Palestinian state. And he's like, "Isn't that where we're at now?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Wow, that's pretty crazy."
Interesting.
That doesn't. And so what's interesting about it is, and obviously he's saying this in retrospect, right? So he's flying it back, but it makes a lot of sense as to why they. So in other words, it's not about like, oh, Hamas is innocent or something like that. Like, but part of the narrative is like, if you're on the side of quote the Palestinians, you're somehow pro Hamas. But the reality of it is, it's like, and a lot of people are like, they should just stop fighting. But I can see from Israel's perspective, they're like, no, we want to finish this once and for all. They just want to move on. But then you have this point of like, you're just totally ignoring all these people that live there.
Right.
I mean, these people actually live there.
Yeah.
So from Israel's perspective, I think they're just like, well, we could just do this. They'll never come back. We'll be done with it. But what's interesting too about it is, do you remember that Noah Yuval Harari thing? It was a while back where he was talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict, sort of, and he was talking about war and everything. And he said the same thing back then. He was like, Hamas was doing something so that they could undermine the support for Israel.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a really fascinating thing, because from the perspective of the Israelis, they're like, see, they're just doing this to undermine support for us. It's this evil thing that they did just to like turn everyone against us.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, maybe that's true. That can also be true.
Yeah.
But it can also be true that you've not really solved the problem actually.
Well,
and this goes back to what we talked about the first time, like after this happened, is like, why don't you just take care of those people?
Yeah.
What did this? Why not just be like, hey, let's just give them all equal rights, and you can be. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, it's
but
also,
instead it's like, no, go ahead.
Because I'm just looking at the point of like how they're telling people at APAC or whoever's going to APAC, whatever, they're telling them that they can't say if you guys want to get support from us, like you cannot talk about civilians being bombed. Meanwhile, at the same time, they've got that Israeli soldier talking to Wolf Blitzer and going like, "Oh, I mean, yeah, no, we bombed that whole village." They're like, "Oh, did you get the terrorists?" No, like can't confirm that, but we did bomb. So he's like, so there was a bunch of civilians that died. Yeah, but it was to get the terrorists. But
Well,
did
he
you
was
get them?
like, but it's just the tragedies of war, right?
Right? Like, yeah, that
Oh,
happens.
and that was the other thing too. That was the other part of the context for the Scott Ritter point he made. He said, what was the point he made? The Hamas people would, and he wasn't like against Palestine. Clearly, he was very. It seemed like he was kind of sympathetic towards it. So he wasn't saying this to be like, "Oh, they're bad." It was just him objectively looking at the situation. But he was like, "It's like, um, they they go in, they attack, they go back where they can scatter and hide, and then the Israelis have to go in and." uh it's like you don't know where they are.
Mhm.
So you're like have to kick down doors and beat people up and threaten them and bomb shit and all this stuff. He's like, oh, there's one. We finally found one. Bomb it. You just got to bomb it now. And like, and you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
so they that was part of the strategy too. He's saying. I mean, I'm not saying this is a fact, but it
yeah.
makes sense. So when they're saying like, well, they use the civilians as human shields, that can also be true.
Yeah.
This isn't like oh, Hamas is good and like, you know, Israel's totally just like lying about every like all of this can actually be the reality of it. Like they are hiding in the population. They do feel like they're justified. And if any civilians are killed, well, they'll go to Allah or whatever. I mean, I don't know what they actually believe about it, but probably something like that. It's justified in some way.
Sure.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the Israelis are not unjustified in their response. But at the same time, why is the fuck is all of it happening in the first place?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like we don't have to be like, well, is Israel's the bad ones, and the Hamas like, oh, they're just doing what they can do, and it's like, okay, so is it okay for them to do that? Like let's just say, is it okay for Israel to bomb a building where there's like a baby in it?
No.
Okay,
Nope.
right. Is it okay for Hamas to be like, well, you know, the only way for us to help these people that we are a part of or whatever, help us, help ourselves, help our people, is to provoke Israel to kill babies?
No.
You see, it's equally fucked up.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you look at Candace Owens, she said, she condemned the Hamas point.
Right.
She said, but it's also sad when a Palestinian baby dies.
Right.
And that's the part where it goes to another level. Because you might seem like I'm saying, well, but maybe Israel isn't bad. It's not about who's right, who's wrong. They're all wrong. And they're all right at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like the next level of it is, why is it now like, oh, you can't talk about the babies are being killed on this side, even though we fucking shove it down your throat that babies were beheaded and killed over here. But over here, if you even mention a vague point about civilians are being bombed, suddenly it's like, then it goes to the anti-Semitism point.
You know, it's kind of like that analogy that you made of like a kid throwing a temper tantrum. It's like when two kids, siblings, get into a fight, right? And then the parents come storming in and they're like, whoa, what's going on? And they're like, well, he hit me. Well, he hit me. And you're like, whoa, okay, hold on. Like, you're not supposed to hit. Oh, you're just attacking me. Like, you didn't see he hit me. Like, I had to, like, well, okay, all right. But,
Yeah.
you know, like, I'm saying what you did was wrong too, but that's not fair. Like, no, it's like, it's still wrong. It's still
Nine
fucking
times
wrong.
out of 10.
Hey, real quick,
Good.
I have to go to the airport. This is fucked. I'm excited to change it. And Cameron, definitely talk about that fucking Texas thing because that I think hits close to home to a lot of
We'll
people.
get to that.
So, all right, cool.
All right. Have
Well,
good travels.
I'll see you guys. Bye.
Don't fly on a Boeing plane.
No. Shit.
Okay, so I was gonna say 9 times out of 10, it's like, because sometimes you'll see the kids start fighting, you'll see what caused it, and then you're like, then you have to step in. Like you said, sometimes you just come in because you hear them screaming and fighting, right?
Right, right.
Sometimes you're watching and then you see how it starts, right? I see this sometimes with like, because we have Caius who's 2 years old, right? So it'll be like, for example, because like when they're that age, especially, they just like to mimic everything everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
So like let's say you and I are like, in the kitchen and we're like playing back and forth and we're like pretending to fight, like, oh, like we're doing, we're just playing, right?
Right.
And then the 2-year-old comes in and sees us, right? And then you kind of like, we stop doing that, right? For like a second, like we're going off to do something else, right? And he comes over and smacks you in the eye.
Yeah.
Right now you're one of the kids. You're like, what the hell? And you like hit him, and then suddenly you're pulling hair and screaming and you're fighting and all this stuff.
Right.
And it's like, stop. Do you understand what happened?
Right. Yeah.
I was watching. I know what happened. What happened was he was just trying to do what we were doing, and he didn't understand that. Also, he doesn't understand, like, if he hits you in the eye,
right, right.
Like, there's a context of like, we're holding back, we're playing. You know what I mean? It's always something like that. It's like the kids are playing with a toy that looks like fun. He wants to come over and play with it too, but then he's taking it from them, and they think he's just coming to take it, and then it's a fight.
Yeah.
Instead of realizing, like, because if he did it to me, I'd be like, hold on, like explain or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's just like this total miscommunication that's occurring.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's challenging with the whole Israel-Palestine thing because the whole thing started before basically any of us were alive.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some geezers out there who were alive when the Balfour Declaration happened, but like they were probably like 10 years old. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Who's alive now was involved when the thing started.
Right. Yeah.
You don't even know what you can trust. You're like, well, but the history books, like, dude, depends on which history book you read.
Right.
And so the whole thing is fucked. And it's like, it's like they don't even want to say anybody's actually living in poverty or anything like that. Because it's like, if you go there, then it's like, well, hold on. Is anybody living in poverty? Okay. So let's start with that. It's like, no, it's not about that. It's about, this religious, and I heard this really cool, man, who was it? I was trying to remember who was talking about this point. I think it was maybe a Dave Smith talk. It was a Dave Smith guy talking with some Muslim guy. And like, they were talking about the whole, oh yeah. Okay. So he was talking about, because he's about the same age as me, I think, roughly. And it's like, when you're growing up and then you like the war on terror and 9/11 and all this stuff. And then they're like, George Bush, they hate us for our freedoms. That's why they're attacking us, right? They hate us because and I remember that, dude. I know you were alive too, but it's like I was sort of like high school age when it happened.
Yeah.
So it's like I remember all of that. It was enough. I was old enough to understand and hear what was being said, right? And it's like, and he was making this point of like, I mean, clearly that's not the reason, but also, if you go and you listen to what they say is their reasons, they're not saying we hate you because of your freedom. They're like, you come here and attack us, we're gonna attack you.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's just like, how can you not see through the obvious ridiculousness of the argument that they just hate you because you're free?
I mean, if you're a fourth grader or third grader, that might sound like, oh yeah, what? They're jealous of me because I'm
it's not even jealousy. It's like they hate it. Like what? Like
yeah.
You hate it?
But I mean the average American accepted that at that time.
You know what it also does? It's kind of interesting. I was just thinking about this. It also reinforces this idea of freedom. It's like, okay, let's say there's some concept that, okay, I'll just spell it out. Like, let's say I want you to embrace transgenderism.
Okay.
Which is a form of freedom in a way.
Can I ask why you want me to embrace transgenderism?
Don't worry about why. Because I want to destabilize capitalism.
Okay.
Just be honest about it. Okay? That's why I'm doing it. Okay. By the way, I heard a really cool breakdown of this. One of the people who actually was that same woman who was reviewing that video.
Yeah.
Put it in there, but she'll go like, pop quiz. Why do the leftists or whoever want to destabilize the nuclear family.
Yeah.
And she explains, she's not saying it's like her theory. She's like, what she does is she watches all of those lectures. Like she'll watch a 3-hour like lecture by Judith Butler and like talk about it the whole time, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen a few of her things, but she's kind of like looking at it from the perspective of what they're actually saying. And what they're saying is like, we want to destabilize the nuclear family because the nuclear family is the basic unit of capitalist production.
Yeah.
And if you can destabilize the nuclear family, you can disrupt capitalism.
That's insane.
But it's obviously true. Like what's happening right fucking now?
Yeah.
And what have we always said? It's like, if you want to build a business, you gotta stabilize yourself.
Right.
Right. And part of
Dude, I saw
how is people don't even want to work. And you can see how that has infiltrated, especially like the younger generations, people like my age and younger. They don't even want to. And I'm not justifying. See, the thing is, like, I kind of agree with a lot of it. Do you know what I mean?
Wait, which side? Which side?
The leftist.
Oh no,
Sorry.
guys.
The trannies.
Guys. Cameron's
I just think there's
Cameron's
better
a
ways to
tranny
go about it.
sympathizer. A
There's
tranny sympathizer.
Okay, here's my perspective. Let's build a new house.
Uh-huh.
Let's not tear down the house we're living in.
Yeah,
Let's not knock the foundation out of the house we're in. Let's just start building a new house.
Yeah.
Okay, that we like. That's better than the one we're in. And so the problem is, it's like, no, let's just let it fall apart, because out of the ashes will rise what? The communist fucking heroes or something? Like, no, dude, it's gonna get way scrappier if there's no like, if there's no system that's like making sure you eat.
Right.
You know? It's like, well, that is already the case for the Palestinians, so we should all experience that. Well, that is actually what's busy happening right now. No one wants to realize it.
Okay.
That's what's so ridiculous about fucking arguing about Christ is king or not. And I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about it. It's just like, anyways, what were you gonna say?
No, I mean, I was gonna say just that point of like, so there's this thing that I'm seeing come up, which is, it's almost as if all those stories that got, spread out of, biblical stories or whatever, ancient stories, that there's echoes of them in basically every culture and every religion all around the world. There's echoes of like the same sort of archetypes, you could say. And it seems like now they're all being pulled to just control, just absolute control. Just like, okay, like now, okay, everybody's got all these stories. You heard this, you heard that. Good. Okay, and that is the Jew. And now, anytime you go against this, it's because you're against the Jew, or you're anti-Semitic, or whatever. It's like that's all being pulled into like this massive control, and it seems like a and I'm saying it this way because I'm thinking back to, we hear about ancient civilizations rising and falling, right? And how we hear all these stories of some despot like trying to like just get a whole bunch of control. It's pronounced despot, right? It's not depot. It's not despo.
Yeah, I think it's despo. That's it.
Despo.
I think it's depot.
A depot. Oh, thank you. But yeah, it's like
Drake, use your phonics.
Oh, despot. Thank you. Sorry. No, but it seems like,
oh wait, hold on, sorry.
I'm
gonna tell you this funny story real quick. Okay. And then, I know I'm derailing you, but Cindy goes the other day, because remember that video of the B says buh, C says, she comes to me just randomly the other day and she goes, Cameron, if B says buh, then wouldn't bat just be butt? She's like, bat is not a butt, right? She's like, it's not buh. Anyways, it's cool when you're 5 can see through it, but yeah.
Yeah, that's why they have all these other videos of it's like, it's not buh, it's buh.
Okay, so DUMB.
Dumb. Dumb.
This portion of the program
Brought to you by phonics.
anti-phonics. Dude, you know, the thing is, if you're against phonics,
You're anti-Semitic.
post anti-Semitic. Yeah.
You're post anti-Semitic, obviously, because I don't know how that argument would follow, but
Dude, I guarantee you some Columbia professor could do it.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. But it's as if everything is being pulled right now for the collapse of this system, right? Of just like absolute control over every individual. And I mean, that's obvious, right? We're seeing that. We talked the other day and we were talking about Zone 23, how, and I guess to give context to that, people are saying, oh, this whole anti-Semitism thing, it's like one of the arguments that was made, which I thought was a good argument, or at least a very clear point being made, was they're saying, hey, you can have whatever beliefs you want to have, but do that over there. You keep to yourself over there in your own private quarters. Maybe we'll let you keep it, but definitely not
like how Christians are treated.
Exactly. Like specifically in this example,
you could be a Christian, but just go have your beliefs. Don't do anything about it.
Don't try to like convert other people into Christianity. Don't talk about your beliefs out loud to other people and, you know, tell them that their ways are wrong. And, you know,
well, you know hold on. But what's interesting is I don't think anyone was even arguing for that per se. Like, I don't think the Christians were going around trying to convert people. And that was the problem.
Well, okay, hang on. Because think about it from, did you go to church as a kid? Like, I know you went to like a private school.
I went to many different churches as a
kid. Okay, same. So growing up, going to church, there was this, I mean, from my perspective, the way I saw it, it was like, there is this imperative that.
I know, but no one's doing that.
Okay. But
the Mormons, maybe they're going out and trying to convert you, or the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Listen,
but
I was one of those kids. I was one of those kids. I took it seriously. And when I would talk to people, and I
like you were going up to like Jews and being like, stop being Jewish, like, or
not
just
necessarily that
people
way.
Who weren't quite on the believing in Jesus and trying to get them to believe in Jesus.
Yeah, but also I did have Jewish friends like in middle school that I remember I was offending them with like the things that I was saying about like, well, you guys, like, because I seriously believed all this stuff, you know, and so I was offending them with like, well, you're a Jew, you killed Jesus, you like did, like, I was basically like, you know how black people
fair enough. Okay,
like,
so I'm sure that happens. Yeah,
you know,
but I guess my point was that wasn't what's happening with Candace Owens in the sense of this blowing up. Like that wasn't that maybe
I'm bringing it up because I've seen over, you know, in my own lifetime, I've seen how that seems to, from my perspective, have been watered down a lot. Okay. Where people don't do those things to that extent anymore. They're not as bold anymore. Like
it's more like come on in if you want to, and you know, but dude, that's honestly, you could probably chart the feminization of males in our society with that. I mean, it's got to be
right. Yeah. Same. But also like when I was growing up, gays were just basically like, at least in my churches, all the churches I went to, gays were just like, no, no, and that was just gays. I'm not talking about trans or anything like that. It was just like, gays, no, you're a sinner. And people would like say to their fucking faces, like, you're a sinner. You're like, you need to repent. You need to convert. Dude, you know, all that.
Did you see that thing with Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin?
No, I didn't.
Somebody was making.
You were telling me about it though.
I told you about it. Where it was like he's sitting. This is like a while ago, I guess. But they were like, it was some previous sit down that they had on Dave Rubin's show.
Yeah,
and it was like, some super chat or something, you know, whatever, like question from the viewers or whatever of like, would you bake a gay cake for Dave Rubin's wedding or whatever, because he's like married to a guy, right?
Yeah.
And Ben Shapiro was like, no, like, because I, as a Jew, like I believe that, I cannot support something that is sin and so forth. And it's like he's straight up to his face being like, you're sinful. He didn't say you are sinful, but it's like, in a way, saying I can't support that because you have a sinful thing that I can't support. And then Dave Rubin was like, well, I'm already married. So, it's like, but, like, what if we threw a anniversary party? Would you come to that? I'm sure he was thinking like, I'll just give you a lifeline so you don't seem like totally fucking anti-gay here. And Shapiro was like, no. And I bring it up because it's like, people are calling him out as being a hypocrite.
Mm-hmm.
And I do understand the hypocrisy point, but it's like, oh, the hypocrite point being like, he will still be friends, so to speak, and go on the show of, and in some way be okay with Dave Rubin, who's married to a dude and has like adopted kids through surrogacy.
Right.
To have gay partner marriage raising kids, okay,
which is supposed to be against even the conservative points, let alone
it's totally insane.
Yeah.
And Ben Shapiro is not okay with it.
Right.
But he'll still have a working relationship with Dave Rubin. But it seems like he can't have a working relationship with Candace Owens because she's somehow anti-Semitic, even though it's a stretch to say what she did really fundamentally was anti-Semitic. And even if it was, in the sense of, see, this is the part where they go into like hate. It's like, okay, it's like, imagine if you like pasta and I like Indian food.
Wait. We gotta switch this around. I like Indian food. You like pasta.
What are you, pasta phobic?
I just don't like pasta that much. I like Indian food.
Fine, fair enough. So I'm like trying to get you to go to like an Italian place. And you're like, I don't want to. And I'm like trying to convince you, right?
And then I'm like, realistic.
But like then going to the level of, well, you hate pasta. You hate, like you hate it. Like you're just evil. When you're like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
So imagine a Christian being like, I don't like Judaism.
Sure, yeah.
I don't like it. Like, I don't like it. It's not, I don't think it's correct. I think it's wrong. In fact, I think it's in some ways, I know it's not technically, but in some ways they think it's antithetical to Christianity, right?
Sure, yeah.
In some ways that they perceive it as a rejection of Christianity.
Sure.
From the perspective of everyone's allowed to have their own opinion.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah. But that okay. See, but this is
so he's saying it's not okay.
Uh-huh.
But the point they're making with the Ben Shapiro thing and Dave Rubin is like, so he's clearly homophobic.
Right.
Now you could say he's not because he's never said anything homophobic. He's never been outspoken against gay is bad. It's like, but he just straight up said, even in that one specific point, that he would not bake a gay cake for Dave Rubin. Okay, haha. He would not even go to an anniversary party.
Right.
Because he is not allowed to support things that are sinful.
Yeah.
So he's allowed to be hardcore, like you said, the past type of Christianity, like, no, gay's not allowed, it's not cool, it's sinful, you're bad, that's not good. He's allowed to do that.
Yeah. But here
Christian, you're not allowed to do that.
I didn't get to the punchline of what I was saying, though, Cam. Yeah, there's a punchline. And that is, okay, so that's what it was when I was growing up. Today, I know Christian pastors who are gay. Like they are married, men married to men. Right? And
they're just married to Jesus?
Huh? No, I thought they were. I thought that was the only man they were supposed to marry.
You think priests can be married to men?
They can be married to Jesus.
Yeah, but I mean, can they be gay? Can you have a gay Catholic priest?
Is this it's sort of rhetorical because
that's a prerequisite.
I'm pretty sure.
I know someone's gonna say, not on Easter Sunday, guys. Come on, respect. Hold on, Christians.
What?
Don't fucking get pissed, Christians. If you're really gonna start standing up and being like, no, we're not taking shit from the Jews, then guess what? You can get shit too. So you can't, you know what I mean?
But okay. But here's the point. Which is,
how are you gonna? Yeah.
everyone, everyone is being watered down, right? To this point of like, you can't have principles, period. You can't have principles. You can't have principles except for what the state tells you you can do.
They're not even principles.
And that's not a principle.
I know, but yeah, you can't have beliefs, honestly. You can't live your beliefs.
You can't stand up for anything.
You can't live it.
Right.
You can believe it, you just can't live it.
Right. And like, okay, yeah, you believe that in your fucking head. But don't say that out loud. Don't live that. Don't like try to actually make that. No.
If it challenges the system. Okay, because let's think about it. What's going on right now? It's like Christianity kind of seems like it's trying to get its balls back. Right? That's it seems like when you listen to that Twitter Spaces.
Yeah,
that's kind of what it seemed like. Is all these people where it's like kind of interesting. They were just openly being like, "Oh, well, the Jews control media in Hollywood." And I was like, "Wow, they're just like straight up saying this now. Like you're allowed to be that anti-Semitic in public." And it's like, but you hear people just being like, "We're adults. We're having a conversation. We can talk about shit, and we don't have to like justify it."
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I thought that was really interesting because that's what the system doesn't want.
Right.
And I'm not like sitting here justifying people should be allowed to be Christian and everyone has to believe. It's all people should be allowed to, but that doesn't mean I agree with it. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
You shouldn't be forced to accept something against your will.
I agree with that.
Because what's the point?
Yeah. You didn't actually accept it.
And I kind of get the Christian argument of why God allows evil. Because like, you can't force people to love you. You could create a reality where you set all the preconditions and therefore you could argue allow for evil within that, even though you could have put other conditions in place to make it easy for people to love you. But I mean, what's the challenge?
Listen, where's
the drama?
Wait. Because I do want to say this is not just only.
Oh no, but he did actually create the preconditions initially.
Which were?
He created that Garden of Eden. Remember, it was like perfect. It was like perfect. There was nothing.
Right. Yeah, but that's not precondition.
But he did put that one rule in place.
Listen, hang on.
He did pretty tempt, and he did allow that serpent in there. I don't know how. I don't know how this. People blame Adam and Eve. Well, they did the original sin, right? It was a perfect place. Yeah. They chose to go against God. I'm like, but no one ever explains how the serpent got there.
Right.
Why was he suggesting something against God? There's got to be some backstory there.
Yeah, why did God
why did the serpent reject God? Like, where's the serpent? Like, just talk about that.
Serpent was just evil. Come on, like
so it wasn't perfect, I'd be like, I made a perfect meal for you, except for that fucking vial of arsenic I put right there next to you. Like, what are you talking about? How can you blame me? It's like, why did you put that there?
Why did you put that in the meal? Wait a minute.
Why did you put it on the table?
Why did you send it to me?
I told you not to. Why'd you put it there?
It looks like pepper. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why nobody questions that. It's an obvious flaw in the story. You
know what though? So fascinating, dude. I love this. The Christians are giving okay. Some Christians are trying to get their balls back, and they're like, you know what? Fuck all this victimization bullshit about the Jews and all the victims and the Holocaust. They're trying to be like, we don't care about that. Like, yeah, it's sad, it's tragic. Just like no one cares about any fucking Holocaust or genocide that happened to anybody else anywhere else. Like, does anyone give a fuck about the genocide in Rwanda except the Rwandans? You know what I mean? Like, no one cares. It didn't affect you. You don't care, right? You don't care.
Yeah.
So that's how the Christians are kind of, some of them anyways, these Christ is kingers, right? They're kind of trying to stand up and be like, look, quit making everything about what we can or can't do in this country about that. It's like a thing that matters to some people. It's not the end all be all that should dictate the direction of our country, humanity, whatever. And I get that argument. But then stop fucking talking about Jesus and the crucifix. It's like, it's the same shit.
Yeah.
The crucifixion of Jesus is literally just, and dude, I was listening to Nick Fuentes thing. He said it. He's like, we have the original Holocaust, like not the original one, but you know what I mean? Like the ultimate, most important one.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and he was being very passionate about what he was saying. And it's like, yeah, what's that about?
So,
it's like, well, but our God died for us. And it's like, does any of, they hate us for our freedom. Doesn't make any fucking sense.
Right.
God came and died for us so we could be forgiven. Makes no fucking sense. And I said for a long time, it's like, show me the mechanics of how that fucking works.
You just gotta trust it.
Okay, explain to me, how does the Muslim hate you for your freedom? Like, what's the freedom that they hate? And you could maybe even make a reasonable argument. They don't like the fact that we have all this rampant homosexuality and stuff like that and everything. But then you would think then the Christians and the conservatives would be like, I actually agree with them on those. Right. I don't like that part about our freedom either, but they're not. They're just like, no, freedom. They hate us because of democracy.
Right. Yeah.
What fucking democracy, dude? Like, you vote for the president and then the state electors go, okay, now who do we want to vote for?
Right.
Like, what democracy? It's all just like bullshit.
Yeah.
So this whole idea of like, oh, Jesus died and then he rose again and he has overcome death. And that allows us to what?
Like, how now you can be free.
Change reality in any way?
Yeah. It's really just a point of, obviously it's really just a point of control. Right. But I think it's funny because even with that, even like with all these ideas or whatever from these Christians speaking, it's like what I've seen is and you probably have seen the same thing, is even these hardcore diehard Christians, a lot of them are just that way until football comes on Sunday. And then they're just the same as like everyone else, or they assimilate that, like that part of them of, oh, I've got to, spread the gospel and all that, like, goes dormant.
Well, okay, let's just look at that, because you were more into the Christianity thing than I was. Like, I grew up in it, I grew up around it, but I never believed it. Okay,
sure, yeah.
So I never accepted it, and like that doesn't mean I don't understand it, but I want to hear from your perspective, like, when someone says spread the gospel,
yeah,
what do they actually mean by that?
Like, from my perspective, the way I understood it was, one, you are supposed to like go and actually talk to people about like Jesus and converting to Christianity. But what that means is then not just saying, oh, I believe in Jesus. The way I understood it was, you have to live it. You have to live like, here, you have these 10 commandments. You have to live like, okay, do unto your neighbor.
The Jews have the 10 commandments.
But I'm just saying, okay, but you are supposed to believe in Jesus. That is important.
But what does that imply?
Like, that implies that, like, yeah, God did sacrifice himself for us, and we got to live like this Jesus guy.
How?
By being like him. Like, okay, you go and you help other people. You're like, you want to change things. You want this world to be an amazing place. All those sorts of things.
But the Christians don't explain what that means, because they're pushing back right now. The war going on right now that I see with the Christians is like, no, Jesus, we're not supposed to be meek. We're supposed to stand up and like not just be like loving and embracing and all this shit. Like, we're supposed to stand. And it's like, also, okay.
Also not gay, which the Jews don't seem to have that rule. I don't know.
But look at it like this, like, do you need Christianity? Do you need Jesus? Do you need the Bible to tell you? Let's just say you think homosexuality is, quote, wrong.
Uh-huh.
Do you need Jesus or the Bible to know that?
No, you don't.
And I'm not saying it's wrong, because that's a very specific meaning, that word wrong.
Right.
Right. How can I explain it? It's like,
I'm just saying that even those people who believe all that stuff are not living. It's sort of like, remember that interview that Gian did with Mitch, where Gian was like, I'd be going to these private Muslim parties where they would have alcohol at the parties. And so secretly,
Right.
all these people were drinking. And then they're trying to get me to drink, and I'm not.
Okay, but I understand your point with that. It's just regardless of that, that's just like they are Muslim by culture. You're not supposed to do it, but they really want to do it.
Okay.
I don't not drink alcohol because Bernard said not to drink alcohol.
Right. Me neither.
I don't not drink it because there's some rule in destiny that says don't drink alcohol. There is
Right.
no rule. There's nothing that says do not drink it.
Right.
There's just an explanation of what it is,
Yeah.
the context of it and the design of it and the purpose of it in our system, which if you were being honest with yourself, you could work it out yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
it's not like you need someone to explain this to you, but you do from the perspective of your vocabulary so fucked up, you can't get past your own emotional. So it's when you study a lot of the destiny stuff, it's like, hey, I'm not going to do any emotional bias bullshit. I'm just going to tell you the actual reality of it. And then you have that moment to either be honest with yourself or not. They're just not going to sugarcoat it. They're not going to embellish. They're not going to have a bias on it. That's really a lot of what that is.
Right.
All of them.
But it's not that point though. It's not that point that I'm saying. Okay. It's the point of compartmentalizing, like what you quote unquote believe, what you're here for, what your purpose is, what your life is about, compartmentalizing that, and then just that letting that go dormant and assimilating back into the system, as in you're not actually doing anything towards that belief. It's just an identity you put on Sundays when you go to church, or on the Sabbath, or on, whatever your holy days are, right? It's just an identity that you put on for these few hours when you meet up with other people who also share that identity.
But let's say you have Christians, I'm sure they exist, who don't do that.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
What are they doing?
Those are the ones.
Let's say we're going to live your Christianity 24/7.
Those are the ones on the street with the megaphones.
Because like when I listen to Nick Fuentes, for example, which I guess he's Catholic apparently, which doesn't make any sense to me. But it's like he was saying, we need to have Christian laws. Like we need to have a Christian president. The leaders in our government need to be Christian. So we have Christian everything, right? And it's like, what does that mean? So what actually comes from that?
I think what he's thinking is probably just protection for his values. What he values specifically.
I suspect it's sort of like then we wouldn't allow pornography. We wouldn't allow certain things because that would go against our Christianity.
Right.
Right. But how do you have a world and a government where all the leaders believe that Jesus died for our sins? Mm-hmm. How does that part get, like, I understand, like, okay, well,
I see what you're saying.
I honestly don't understand how in the Bible, maybe there's some quote or some scriptural verse or something that's like pornography is bad and that's why they're saying that. But if it didn't say that, then would it be okay?
Yeah.
You see my point? Like, do you need Jesus to have said it or the Bible to have said it?
To realize, like,
or can you see it for yourself? Because where does it talk about AI? We just don't know what to do with it one way or the other. I guess if AI does crimes on people, I guess it's okay because it didn't talk about it in the Bible. It's like, what if it does some novel thing that just the Bible could not have any context to talk about? Would you not know what to do? Right. Or would you be able to use fucking common sense and be like, hey, this is not best? And that's the problem I have with all of this is like, it's just either common sense or it's not. Mm-hmm. And if you can't, because this idea like, that these Christians have, these Christ is King people that they have of like, we're going to have a Christian nation.
Yeah.
The majority of the founders of our country were Christian or something. I'm talking about the US, right? Like, okay. So that's what we're going to want. Like some countries are Christian and some are Muslim. And then like, we're going to all get along somehow. No, we're not. We're going to protect our interests. So it's going to be fight over resources based on my group, except like, let's say the Christians get their wish and they get rid of the Christians and the Muslims get their wish and they get rid of the Jews. What about the Buddhists?
Yeah.
Are the Christians and Muslims just going to live together forever happily?
No, definitely not. I mean,
How can this world ever work? And how can you ever prove the other one wrong? Like, you can say it's a fact that Christ is king, right? That's what these people are saying. Well, it's a fact. It's a fact. Christ is king. So I should be able to say it. And yeah, maybe you can use it in a way that's hurtful towards other people or not, depending on the context of what you're doing. But like, I could punch someone in the face and say Christ is king, but I punched them because they're not believing in my religion. So it was justified. But I say Christ, I guess that's bad to say Christ is king after I said that.
I like what Jeremy
I don't think it was
said.
the Christ is king part that was the bad part, by the way.
I like what Jeremy Boring said, where he was like, eat some cornbread. If I say that to my 3-year-old, but she doesn't want to eat.
But if I say it to other, maybe, I don't know who you would say it to. Maybe that would make it bad. But, I'm just saying maybe that could. It's like, why'd you choose that phrase? That was
right. That was interesting.
That'd actually be a funny shirt. Like, just eat some cornbread.
Eat some cornbread.
Somebody's gonna do that. Right. They're gonna start saying that to be racist to people. They're gonna go to Black Lives Matter rallies and just be like, eat some cornbread.
I mean, it was a good one. I liked it. I liked that talk.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
What was I saying before that? It's like,
if you punch somebody in the face and say Christ is king, like, it's the punching somebody in the face, it's bad. It's nothing.
Anyways, but I guess the point I was trying to make before that was like, do you see that fly?
Where?
Can't see it. Okay, it was like buzzing around my head. It was looking for a Hillary Clinton or somebody. Remember that whole thing on the debate when it was like
Mike Pence?
Oh, Mike Pence too.
On his hair.
I think it was a remote controlled drone.
Obviously,
it was Mossad.
Yeah,
it was the Fly DF.
Oh, dude. Oh, you know what we didn't talk about? Okay, wait. I was bringing that up specifically, though. I was bringing all that stuff up specifically because it's like that point of, yeah, you can have your beliefs, but don't actually live them. And then the other point of, and what's coming in is control of the words that you can say, the things that you can say, the anti-Semitism. It's like, oh, so what is anti-Semitism? Well, it changes, it mutates. So it can change at any moment, but you're not supposed to say anything anti-Semitic. Well, how do I know if I'm saying anti-Semitic? We'll let you know, right? And now we have literally in, 38 states? 38 states have some law or something passed of you can't use anti-Semitic speech in like a college campus. Like that. That's crazy. And then the definition is like, well, based on what the current definition of anti-Semitic speech means.
No, at least I read the Texas executive order. It's based on the International Holocaust Remembrance Association or whatever. It's like the IHRA. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's like a list of examples. It's like there's a definition, but then there's a list of examples.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, those are just examples. That's not necessarily per se the definition. But in the executive order, it says we're using the working definition from the IHRA, I think it's called.
Okay.
And examples are given in there. So that's a weird thing to celebrate, Drake. How did you do that?
I didn't know. I think it's. Wait, does yours recognize your reactions? Like if you put a thumbs up?
I have it turned on. But how did you get the balloons?
When you I don't know. I did working example. It was with quotes, so maybe it's a peace sign. There it is.
Say Holocaust to do it.
Holocaust.
Wow, Zoom. Really? Zoom, dude. This is making me very uncomfortable.
Crazy. I didn't know those existed. That's interesting.
What were we talking about?
But the anti-Semitism laws.
But in the executive order, it says like some examples are given. It's like in the actual executive order, it's like some examples are given. So here we're adopting this working definition from this group, and on that group's website, they give some examples. So that to me implies they're basically finding a way to take those examples and put them into the law.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Even though they're saying we're using this definition, the definition doesn't include those examples. They also mention the fact that there are examples given by
Right.
that group on their website.
Right.
Why are they specifically? Why don't they just say we're just using their working definition?
Right.
They
Yeah.
specifically mention that there's examples. So that to me means they're thinking also these examples are valid. Because when you read the examples, you're like, can you pull it up real quick?
Yeah, give me a second.
I'm gonna go outside for just a minute and pee.
Okay. All right, I'm just gonna pull up these definitions. I'm just gonna pull up what you sent. I know you can't respond right now, but I'm just gonna pull up what you sent. Hang on. There we go. And then let me see if I can share this. Can I share just this part? Hopefully that's not sharing like all my messages. Okay. So this is basically the Texan law, which was March 27th, 2024. So this is only like 4 days ago. And is basically saying Texas Education Code requires all higher education institutions to adopt policies detailing students' responsibilities regarding free expression on campus and provides that students should not participate in and higher education institutions should not allow expression that is unlawful or disrupts the operations of the institution, and anti-Semitism and the harassment of Jewish students have no place on Texas university campuses and will not be tolerated by my administration. This is the governor saying that. Therefore, I, Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, by virtue of the power and authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of the state of Texas, hereby direct Texas higher education institutions to do the following: review and update free speech policies to address the sharp rise in anti-Semitic speech and acts on university campuses, establish appropriate punishments, including expulsion from the institution, ensure that these policies are being enforced on campuses and that groups such as the Palestine Solidarity Committee and Students for Justice in Palestine are disciplined for violating these policies. Ooh. Include the definition of anti-Semitism adopted by the state of Texas in section whatever of the Texas Government Code.
Okay, so if you go to 448.001,
is that this right here?
Oh yeah, I think that's what I sent you, right? This is that 448 at the top.
Yeah.
Right. 001.
Yeah.
Right. Here's where it says, and number 2, anti-Semitism means a certain perception of Jews that may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. The term includes rhetorical and physical acts. Examples of anti-Semitism are included with the International Holocaust Remembrance's working definition. Okay. So go to that. That's what I was, but I'm glad you brought the other stuff up too.
Yeah.
Just go to like IHRA working definition.
Is this it?
Well, that's just part of it though. I want to show you the whole thing.
You want me to pull up the whole thing? Okay. Oh, oops.
God is the greatest, by the way.
All right, hang on. I gotta stop sharing. So
yeah, stop the screen share. You don't want to show everyone all my text to you.
I don't.
Some of those are private.
You guys saw how he was trying to get me to be trans at the beginning of this, right? Let's see. IHRA working definition. What is anti-Semitism? Here we go. All right, what is anti-Semitism? Let's click on this one.
Christ is King, he is the Lord of my life.
Oh, whoa. Being very anti-Semitic here.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was muted.
All right.
Christ is King, being anti-Semitic.
Adopt the following non-legally binding working definition of anti-Semitism. What is the plenary in Bucharest? What is that?
No.
All right. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews.
And that is how they defined it in the other thing, right?
Yeah.
And then they said
property, Jewish community, institutions, religious facilities.
Okay. Or their property. Right. Does that include me?
Oh, maybe that's why it's anti-Semitic, to be against like illegal immigration. Anyway, anti-Semitism frequently charges Jews with conspiring to harm humanity, often used to blame Jews for why things go wrong. Expressed in speech, writing, visual forms, and actions, and employs sinister stereotypes and negative character traits. Okay. Include, but not limited to, calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of radical ideology or an extremist view of religion. Okay.
I mean, I feel like that's just covered under like don't call for killing people, but
yeah, don't kill anybody.
Yeah, I'm okay with that one, I suppose. All right. Okay.
All right. Making mendacious. I don't know that word. That is a new word for me. I've never seen this word before. Have you seen this word before?
Yes.
Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews, such as such, or the power of Jews as collective.
Why is that mendacious? Why is that demonizing? I mean, why is it a problem if it's stereotypical? You have to throw stereotypical out because there's nothing wrong with something being stereotypical. The implication is that mendacious and stereotypical go together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Especially, but not exclusively.
The myth about a world of Jewish conspiracy or of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions. Hang on. Is it a myth if it actually is the case? Like if it like if
but that's my point. The assumption is it is a myth.
Hypothetically speaking. Hypothetically speaking,
you can't even talk about it because you're talking about a myth.
Okay. But hypothetically speaking, let's say sometime in the future.
I want to ask these same people, like, what about white privilege?
Well, that's not a myth. First off.
And the Muslims have zero sympathy for the whites right now, by the way. They're like, oh boy, the whites, they think that there's a genocide happening on them in America, but they do recognize that there's like some Jewish conspiracy against whites to like, lessen them and diminish them. But they're like, okay, join the club.
Right.
The whites.
It's interesting that, okay, so what happens if hypothetically in the future, all of these institutions that they're talking about, like the media and economy, government, and other societal institutions, what if they were all
like what if it does actually happen that way?
Is that still anti-Semitic?
Like, even if it's not now, what if it does happen? You won't be able to talk about it?
It's a good question.
That'd be like, because the COVID pandemic was real, you're not allowed to question pandemics.
Yeah.
So you're saying then that could never be abused, ever. Even if it wasn't abused in this case, could it ever be abused? It's like, nope, it's a conspiracy theory that it can even be abused. Like, what? That's weird.
That's really interesting. Accusing Jews, I'm actually okay with this one. Accusing Jews as the people of being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoing committed by a single Jewish person or group, or even for acts committed by non-Jews. That makes sense. Like, why would I accuse all whites of being slave owners if only one did it?
Hold on. Where did you see the word white in there?
No, I didn't at all. I was just making an analogy.
You can't.
Why is that?
Well, because this isn't the working definition of hateful words. Mm-hmm. This is anti-Semitism, Drake.
Oh, my bad.
Be a single law anywhere that says specifically you can't claim that white people are evil, that white people control the world, that white people are bad, and that they oppress other groups, and that they are, show me any law or any group anywhere that says you can't do that.
I don't think we have that.
Show me the same thing for blacks, for that matter. Show me the same thing for Muslims. Show me the same thing for any other group.
Well, we have hate crimes. But those are usually just based on, like, if you say you hate somebody and then you commit a crime and it's like a crime of passion for that hate, then it becomes a hate crime, which I'm sure the Jews would be covered under that.
Who's ever committed a crime on somebody because they liked them? It's like the whole parent thing, like hitting your kid and you're like, this is hurting me more than it hurts you.
I mean, that's pretty much what that rabbi was saying about, Palestine. He's like, it's because we love them so much that we have to
we can forgive you. We can eventually perhaps forgive you for murdering our people, but we can never forgive you for making us murder yours.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's weird.
But let's get serious here. This is like serious shit.
Denying the fact, scope, mechanisms, an example given gas chambers or intentionality of the genocide of the Jewish people at the hands of National Socialist Germany and its supporters and accomplices during World War II, the Holocaust. Okay. Does it count if like the prime minister of Israel is changing facts?
Right.
I don't know, because I'm just saying he's saying facts that I had never
Well,
heard
he did
before.
say they did it, and he did later say that Hitler is responsible, but
Yeah.
didn't want to do it initially. A Muslim convinced him. I thought that was a very interesting. That was Netanyahu.
I've
That was
never heard that argument before.
I've never heard it come from yeah, well, no, actually I hadn't either. I'm being exposed to all kinds of stuff. Some of these guys are the biggest supporters of anti-Semitism in a way, because it's like, you didn't know that whole theory. Then you start getting into it and you're like, there's this whole theory that some Muslim dudes was like, dude, okay, so here's the theory from Netanyahu, like a public address, right? Where you look into it, they're basically like, and this is what Netanyahu said, is that this Muslim dude came over to Germany or met with Hitler or whatever and was like, don't just kick the Jews out of Germany, because then where are they going to go? They're going to come here. Like, I guess that means to the Muslim countries. He was like, then, and apparently Hitler said, so what should I do with them? And the guy said, just burn them.
That's my first time hearing this.
Right. I'm like, okay, that's so now we're getting into the like the Muslims are Nazis, I guess.
You know, it really makes me want to learn about the history of the Holocaust. I gotta be careful the way I say this, right? I don't want to say I look into, because then it sounds like I'm investigating and I'm like, questioning things. But
investigate all things and keep what is best. This is like, don't investigate anything.
Yeah.
Don't keep the best arguments. Whatever
I tell you.
Okay. Yeah. Whatever we got the schools to teach you. When I say we, there's no we.
Yeah. Okay. Accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. Interesting, because I know of some books written by Israeli citizens that suggest this last part here. That's interesting. Okay. So, but they would not be considered anti-Semitic. They would just be considered like self-hating.
That's what that rabbi said.
But I've heard that argument actually a few times now. It's not his own.
But I don't understand, like, how do you know if you're Jewish?
Oh, damn. Okay. I think I see where you're going with this.
Right? Maybe this is the whole reason for that post-anti-Semitism thing.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be like, but how do you know if you're Jewish?
Yeah. Well, it's still anti-Semitic. It doesn't matter.
But how do you know if you're Jewish?
Well, I mean, don't we all come from the tribes of Abraham?
No, what I mean is, like, how do you know if you're a man or a woman?
Well, I have what's called a penis.
It could be a female penis.
Yeah, no.
That's the argument, right?
That is the argument.
I'm just saying, like, isn't it just identity? Couldn't you just be like, well, no, but I've genetically, your genes don't even make you a man or a fucking woman.
Yeah.
So how does it make you Jewish or not?
Yeah.
Just the whole fucking logic that we are living in this reality is so fucked.
Ooh, this one's a good one. Accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or to the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interests of their own nations. But hang on. Isn't that the whole reason why we can't have a president that was born in any other country? Isn't that the whole argument there? It's just like, well, because then they're going to be loyal to that other nation, and we want them to be.
But okay, but see, here's the crazy thing about this is like, oh man, it's like, why can't you accuse somebody of that? Because what if they actually are?
Yeah.
Like, I know it doesn't say this, and it won't say this, but like, what if it said, like, what if there was some stereotype that Jewish people randomly like murder people once a year because of, it's like some weird anti-Semitic trope, right? Okay.
Sure.
Then it was like accusing Jewish people of murdering other people or something, because
Yeah.
that was, it's like they're taking stuff that you could reasonably argue some people would use as a way to, let's say, demean or take advantage of, or in a way compete with Jews, right? Like by like trying to push them out of a business because you're like being anti-Semitic or whatever. Okay. Like, but then to be like, you can't accuse a Jewish citizen. What does it even mean, Jewish citizen?
Yeah, citizen of
I mean,
what?
of
It's
like
not really
America?
clear. It's not really clear. Yeah.
Is this an American? Let's assume they mean American.
Okay.
Or you know what I think it means is a citizen of any country
Yeah.
who's
That
Jewish,
who happens
accusing
to be
them
Jewish.
of being a citizen, who is a citizen in some country, of being more loyal to Israel than their own. Oh, yeah, it says it right there. I just didn't read the rest of it. To their own
Yeah.
nation.
Yeah.
Um, but oh, it's so interesting, man. Like, this goes back to that point of with like Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro, which we never really finished, but it was like, so he's not, he's okay with sitting down with Ben Shapiro. I'm sorry, Ben Shapiro's okay with sitting down with Dave Rubin and having some kind of working relationship, even though he's like, you're totally in sin and I don't agree with you at all. And I wouldn't even come to an anniversary party. But I can't work with, I mean, I don't know if he is the one who said he can't work with Candace Owens, but he seems to be okay with it. He's not speaking out. Okay. So
Yeah.
he's okay with them getting rid of her, I guess. I would assume. Because it seems like she's not for
War.
well, I know, but that's almost like
An oversimplification.
it's like
It
I
seems
can't prove that he doesn't want her around because she's not. What is she not? She's not pro
Israel.
That's really all it is. Because I've never
Yeah.
heard things. I've never heard any say anything against Jewish people generally, like, or like the
Sure.
religion of Judaism. It seems like she's just not agreeing with something that Israel's doing right now, and that's what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess my point was like, that's not even like a sin. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I can be cool with you. So why is he okay and willing to overlook Dave Rubin's apparent sins?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
Dave Rubin is Jewish or pro-Israel.
Yeah.
Clearly pro-Israel. Dude, and I stopped listening to him after the whole point came out with him adopting those kids. I was like, dude, fuck that, dude. Like,
Yeah.
like something's weird about that shit. Like, that's just fucking weird. And anytime I would see anything, even with a headline that was interesting, I would just like click off of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like I'm not supporting it. Like, it's weird. And it's just weird that that would be okay to not. It's not okay, but it's like, anyways, you know what I'm saying? That's where I see like the hypocrisy of it.
Yeah.
And then I guess my point is, doesn't it show you his loyalty? It's like, I can still work with you in business. I can be on your show. I wouldn't even come to your party. I wouldn't bake your gay cakes. I'm not down with any of that. But you can't work with me over here because you're not pro-Israel. Doesn't that kind of mean like he has a very strong loyalty to Israel?
Yeah.
And I mean, he's very clearly pro-Israel.
Yeah.
But like, this is saying what I just said is an example of anti-Semitism.
Right. Which is
maybe I don't even actually have a problem. What if I don't even have a problem with him being that way?
Right.
Which I'm just like, hey, clearly it makes sense for him to be that way. He's Jewish, and the people there, it's like, I like the fact that he's pro-Israel, and he's definitely more loyal to Israel than to the United States, and I think that's a good thing. And I don't really care if that's still anti-Semitic.
That's anti-Semitic.
So my point is like, what if it's an actual fact? You see, they said the fact of the Holocaust and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't say the fact of the genocide in Gaza.
Right.
Who determines when it's a fact or not?
Yeah. These guys, apparently.
Who? These
people who wrote this.
Common, Drake. They don't.
They have this website in common.
There you go. Okay, that's what I thought you meant.
There you go. Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, example given by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. Okay.
Okay, hold on. What does that mean? Denying them their right to self-determination?
Basically, if you disagree with anything that Jewish people determine.
If somebody said, tell me, like, you're just the average person, what's your gut reaction to this? I think the United States should be a Christian nation and we should have Christian laws and we should have a Christian government and Christian leaders.
Yeah, that guy, he's like, yeah, I think
Isn't your gut reaction as an average person like, oh, you're radical, you're crazy, you're a little extreme?
Yeah, that guy
but
is
isn't
like,
that is just Christian right to self-determination? Does that mean that they should be allowed to harm other people? No, but that wasn't implied in what I said.
right.
But should Christians be allowed to, if they're the majority in this country, should they be allowed to be like, you know what, this is actually a Christian country? Anyone says that, they're like, what are you talking about? It's not a Christian country. How dare you say that? It's like, but right here you have like, no, Jewish people have a right to self-determination.
Well, hang on. Because listen, Cam, you didn't read the next example. Applying double standards by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. And right now, you're applying some double standards here. Okay.
Am I the one applying the double standard?
Well, you're requiring some behavior from us that we wouldn't expect from you guys.
Okay, nationalism.
Yeah.
Good,
wrong.
bad.
Wrong. It's wrong. Wrong.
What the fuck is the state of Israel?
Hey, double standards.
Isn't that like a fucking nationalist, like
double standards here? Gosh.
No, I'm just applying.
You don't know how to read.
Standard.
you don't know how to read.
I'm not applying the double standard. I'm applying the standard.
Using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism. Claims of Jews killing Jesus or blood libel. Whoa.
I don't know the whole blood libel thing, but
well, let's just go with claims of Jews killing Jesus. Like that is classic anti-Semitism.
Okay, but hold on, but let's be legalistic about this. What does it actually say? Using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism, and there's examples, to characterize Israel and Israelis.
Yeah.
So if I do it just to Jews generally, no, this doesn't even make sense. This example. The example of anti-Semitism is using symbols of anti-Semitism.
This rule right here, this example.
I even put that one in there.
This is anti-Semitic.
I even put it in there. Like it's like doing things that are anti-Semitic. That's an example of anti-Semitism. Like, well, how do you know which ones are anti-Semitic or not?
How do you know?
Who determines this?
These images are associated with classic anti-Semitism.
Hold on. Why does it say symbols?
I would assume like
claims of Jews killing Jesus, symbols. What symbols would represent that?
Oh, wow.
But it says to characterize Israel or Israelis. Like, why is this defending Israel?
Yeah. Well, because we already established over here that if we talk about anti-Israel, where'd it go?
Honestly, like, and I don't have a dog in the fight, let's say. I'm not a fucking Christian who's like, I'm under attack. Like, this seems like this would do more to harm the cause of people who feel like anti-Semitism is coming at them. It's like,
I don't understand what you're saying.
Imagine there's only there's a million people and only one of them is aware of like some conspiracy theory. And so to prevent the spread of the conspiracy theory, you wrote a book giving all of the detailed arguments and all the evidence of the conspiracy theory.
And spread it out to everybody.
It's like Jews don't control anything. Like, what are you talking about? And then you make this website and you get the definition put into like every fucking 30 states in the US and and you're like, who's doing this? I was watching that thing with Kristi Noem. Is it South Dakota? I think it's South Dakota.
Yeah.
And they were saying, I mean, I don't know if this is an exaggeration, but they were saying there's only like 300 Jews or something in South Dakota, and they like passing one of these laws there of like, what?
Yeah.
Who is? And like, is it just 300 people lobbied it? I doubt that.
No.
There's something weird going on there, and maybe no one's doing it. Maybe just Christy Nome, or they're just like so. I don't know.
There are a lot of evangelical Christians who are like really hardcore about the state of Israel, you know,
which I don't understand.
I don't understand it either, but
you know, again, like kind of going back to the other point, it's like at least if you're Christian and you're like not agreeing with, would anyone have a problem if Jewish people were like, no, Muslims, they're bad, like their religion is against ours, they hate us?
No, I don't think so.
So why can't Christians say that about Jews?
Because this is their country too. This is just like, I don't know.
What I'm really challenging is like the point of within a person like that we've been programmed with a feeling about something.
Yeah.
That's what it is. We've been programmed to have a certain feeling, a certain reaction to something. That's how we know something is being used to control you. It doesn't mean you have to believe. And see, it's just like this thing where it's like, well, you see the last one, holding Jews collectively responsible for the actions of the state of Israel.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're going to hold them collectively responsible. You're going to hurt all people. And then someone's going to attack somebody because of that. I'm like, that person was going to attack people regardless.
Right.
What anyone said or didn't say.
Right.
If people are attacking people, the answer is not we need to lock down anti-Semitism. The answer is why are people so mentally unstable that they're attacking people?
Yeah.
It's like it's totally insane.
Whoa, dude, this is crazy. They're bringing this over here.
Well, but it says when they are defined by law.
When they are defined by law, which is what's happening. Well,
no, it's not necessarily happening. Like I'm not sorry. I'm not saying it's not happening, but these examples we're giving with like Texas, it's not saying it's criminal.
But it's being defined by law.
No, it says anti-Semites are criminal when they are so defined by law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not saying they're
so
if there's anything in the law about it, then they are criminal. That's not what it's saying.
But they're creating laws about it. Would this be a
I would suggest act? It's a slippery slope. No, they're not. Like the executive order wasn't, we deem these as criminal acts. So they're not saying go to jail. They were just saying you can get kicked out of your university.
Okay. Is there anywhere else that you can't do this?
Well, I don't know.
University.
In the US, I don't know.
Because what would be the consequence? Like, all right, like
but I think it's a slippery slope.
It is. Because like, look, if you could get kicked out of your job for something like this, I think that's criminal. Because then you can't make a living.
Well, yeah, but you're using the word criminal.
No, but that's fucking criminal. You're sentencing that person to fucking poverty. You're sentencing them to like.
Yeah, no, I do agree. It's
murder.
Yeah.
I may be getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but
the problem is when you say it's like, well, but not according to the law. Yeah, but you could just change the law. Like that's the problem with this.
Yeah.
This may seem like, okay, look, guys, like, what are you so upset about? Why do you hate Jews so much that you don't want these laws passed? And I'm like, it's not about hating.
It's like the fact that, okay, it would be the same thing as like, oh, the trans want laws about all their rights or whatever. It's like, there are human rights and we should all have them. We should all equally share in rights as being human. We should all be protected. And that does not mean, okay, now everybody gets their own laws of like, oh, but you can't say this about me and I can't say this about you. Like, no, that doesn't make sense either.
Yeah. How does this help anything?
Right.
Like, okay, you can unshare it for a moment if you want. Let's say you're Greg Abbott.
Yeah.
And you truly believe that anti-Semitism has increased. See, it's so slimy, like all this stuff, because it's like,
whoa, slimy. Hey, it's very anti-Semitic.
Is it? Is that a trope? What if it just gets to a point where you're like, man, toast again for breakfast? Can we have some oatmeal? Oatmeal? You don't want toast? That's anti-Semitic. Because one time in 1493, a
Yeah.
Jewish rabbi was killed while eating toast, and you're like, oh, fuck, man. Like, they literally, you can't say anything.
Yeah.
Um, let's just assume for a moment that Greg Abbott is just a genuine guy and he really just sees a report that anti-Semitism is on the rise. And he's like, we need to not allow Jewish people to be abused. Okay, fine. I'm in agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start passing laws or executive orders or whatever that restrict what people are allowed to say about Jews. Okay. That's in the context where you already know part of the problem is a lot of people are starting to believe that Jews control government, Jews control the media, blah, 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 right? You know that this is a problem. These idiots believe these conspiracy theories. Okay. So let's do something that makes people think it's fucking happening even more.
Right.
And you might say, well, okay, but it's not happening and they're just trying to protect. How does it help anybody?
Right.
How does it help? Because, okay, so you're at university and you're not allowed to make a claim that the Holocaust was exaggerated, or you can be kicked out of university.
And also,
isn't that what it said? Can you go back to it real quick?
Yeah. No, that is what it said.
It didn't say you can't go shout it in a Jewish person's face.
No, it said you can't make a claim that it was exaggerated.
It said just making a claim that it was exaggerated.
Yeah.
Or making the claim that Israel exaggerates it.
Yeah.
There's like two different ones, right?
It says accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust.
What was the one about
denying the fact, scope, mechanisms, or intentionality of the genocide of the Jewish people at the hands of National Socialist Germany and its supporters and accomplices during the World War II.
That was a full example in itself, separate from the other you said.
Yep.
How is that harming?
How is that harming somebody who's alive today? Who did
How
not
is
live
harming
through
anybody on a college campus to say that?
It would be like, listen, you cannot claim that some of the stories of slavery are fictional. Like, wait, what? You can't claim some of the stories of slavery are fictional. Why? Why not?
Oh, but Drake, it's because if you say stuff like that, you're holding a whole group of people accountable. They're gonna make the go ahead.
Hold on. Because there's man, I forgot the name of the book. Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin is a fictional book about slavery. The Roots was a fictional TV show about slavery. Right? You're saying that a movie produced about slavery, and I'm using this as I'll get to the point, but you're saying that a movie about this topic could not possibly exaggerate this topic, could not possibly invent things. It's a movie. It's a fictional piece of work, right? Do you know how many movies there are about the Holocaust? You're saying none of that, not a single item was exaggerated.
Well, and okay, it's a good point because
you can't make
somebody might say, well, those are movies or something, right? But a book, a history book, is just a work of art.
Right.
It just because it's a book that's in the history section doesn't make it facts.
Right.
Any more than somebody who writes a fucking history book that totally flat out denies the Holocaust doesn't make it a fact.
Right.
Just because they put it in the history section, they're like, this isn't fiction.
Or also, when they interview eyewitnesses, sometimes eyewitnesses get it wrong. They get it completely wrong. They're like, oh, they have a notion of what somebody thinks it looks like or whatever, or what happened. but from their perspective, they didn't see everything. And so you have like multiple.
I think his mustache was really small, but it could have been a full beard. I don't remember.
Right. But like you ask these people over here, those people over there, you get conflicting stories. Like, so what's the fact? Like, if you just take everything that they said and put it in a book, does that make it all fact then?
You know what it reminds me of, going back to like I always talk about like the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
You ever seen like different pictures of dinosaurs and they all look like the same? Like you're like, oh, that's a T-Rex. Oh, it doesn't look like the way you thought it looked, because it was a different picture. You like, you
Right.
can have 10 different books on dinosaurs and they all look different.
Yeah.
And
Some of them will have
feathers and
feathers.
shit. Like, in other words, but so you're thinking, oh no, there's the real dinosaurs.
Yeah.
It's like nobody knew what they looked like.
Right.
So the only way a person studies how dinosaurs looked like was by studying a book that someone else wrote, imagining what they looked like.
I just want to put a pause.
Like,
I just want to put a pause because what you're doing right now is very anti-Semitic. You're comparing the Jews and their stories and the Holocaust and everything to dinosaurs. And that is very anti-Semitic. I just want you to know that. But continue.
well, they did create the museums. It's like that's how history is done. It's like someone studied the books written by people who read the books written by other people who read the books written by other people, and they're just writing down the shit from all the different people they studied who didn't talk to the people originally.
Yeah.
It's like if I was going to write a book about the Civil War, so I just went and read all the textbooks that are in schools about the Civil War and then wrote my own book about the Civil War. I didn't go to any fucking source material.
Which, by the way, is how they actually teach you in school. It's how they actually teach you in school these days. Is if okay, we want you to write a history paper. But what we want you to do is read through your history textbook. Maybe you go to the library and you check out another history book, right?
But you don't, but they're not like, you have to read Robert E. Lee's autobiography, his letters to his generals. You have to read Lincoln's actual speeches. Like maybe some of that, but you don't, the way a lot of history is done is it's scholars learning from other scholars, learning from other scholars, learning from other scholars.
Dude, they talk about this in Foundation, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm an archaeologist. Oh, you are? Like, yeah, I love studying archaeology. Oh, wow. So he's like, yeah, when I read about this theory and this theory and this scholar, that scholar, like, but have you ever gone to that site and looked at the rocks there? Have you ever gone, like, they're talking about different planets. Have you ever gone to that planet? Have you ever been? Why would I need to go there? I read the book. That's basically how they teach. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, when you're in 5th grade and you learn about fucking stars and red giants and brown dwarfs and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you see
I thought those were like, Snow White characters.
I thought they were gonna say Willy Wonka.
Brown dwarf. Those are called pygmies. Okay, we have a different word.
Yeah, they're orange.
Yeah.
Orange face.
And that's just so racist. I mean, anti-Semitic.
This is Donald Trump. You're allowed to make fun of that guy's skin color all day, and his weight too. But anybody else, no. But like when you're in 5th, I was in 5th grade. Is why I remember 5th grade. But it's like you're learning about stars and supernovas and all this shit. And you see all these pictures, and you're like, oh, this is what the scientists are looking at. And they're literally just pictures they created.
Yeah.
Using a computer or something. Like, there's no telescope that when you look through it, you see a gas nebula and all that shit. Like, that is fabricated.
Yeah.
And literally, you want to know what a fucking gas giant or a gas nebula looks like?
A fart.
Have you ever seen a spreadsheet, or like, remember in linear algebra, like they're in matrices, and you have like the rows and columns of numbers and shit? That's what it looks like to a scientist.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's fucking data.
Yeah.
They did some test and the computer pointed out this information and they're like, oh, okay, so the temperature here spikes there. And then they create a picture of something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like when people share those pictures online and shit, and you're like, this, wow, the nature and the beauty of God. And you're like, that's not real. It
Right.
doesn't look like that. That's some artists interpret. It's like when you use filters on your phone and you make the thing look so amazing or something. It doesn't look like that. That's not
Yeah.
real. It's not actually how it looks, At least you took a picture of something in that case. But I guess what we were talking about was the exaggerating stuff and all that. It's like, so which history book is correct?
Hmm.
Because, if you go and you start going down this rabbit hole, you learn about David Irving, who was like he wrote like biographies of like Churchill, Hitler, Himmler, all these guys, right? And then he ended up going to prison in like Norway or something for quote unquote denying the Holocaust, even though he didn't directly do that. It's a whole thing you can look into. Actually, I saw
like
one of
10 years.
Or like 5 or 10 years, something like that, yeah. And like solitary confinement.
Yeah.
I saw one of his books at a half price the other day when we were in.
Oh.
And it was about like Himmler or something. It was just like I was like flipping through it, and it's just like a fucking boring ass. Like it's not like it's not like anything negative at all. It's just some history book, right?
Yeah.
But he would go and interview the people. Like when he wrote his biography of Hitler, he went to Germany and interviewed, and he wasn't pro-Hitler. He wasn't like, I love the guy, I love everything he did, the Holocaust, everything great. He wasn't any like pro this or that. He went to Germany and he talked to people who were alive at the time Hitler was in power and so forth, or maybe they were kids at the time or whatever it was, or knew people and so forth, and like just went and talked to people. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that in itself is all he did, but that was a big part of it. That's how history, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just be like, well, I read this textbook. And it's like, where did they get their information?
Right.
But you're like, it doesn't matter. It's fact. So the information that we've received about the Holocaust, it's like, you can't deny it. It's like, okay, well, I'm not saying I'm denying it, but what's the information? Like, how do you know? And I'm curious, like, think about a child. Like, how do you, like, my kids are always asking why? Right? Or Seneca always likes to say, like, how do you know?
Yeah.
And she says it at the silliest stuff. Like, I'll be like, man, like, I'm really hungry. She'll be like, how do you know? Like, it's silly stuff, right? But they're curious. They want to know, right?
Yeah.
Or I'll be like, oh,
no, but that's actually a good question. Like, how do you know you're hungry? Like, because as a child, you're like, well, what? Okay, here's a good example. As a child, I would get tummy aches, and my mom would be like, you probably just have to poop. I'm like, no. And she's like, yeah, you probably just have to poop. And then I'd poop, and I'd be like, how do you know?
You know? Well, but my point is, like, you're just curious. You want to know the information. You want to understand.
Yeah.
Right? You want to understand it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And what we found is that when you explain stuff to kids, they get a lot smarter, a lot faster when you actually explain it.
Yeah.
So, but what's going on right now is, like, instead of just over explaining, that's what a good parent would do. They would explain. They would just be like, just don't question it. That's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Is the world, people are being treated like little kids where the parent is just the dictator. And like, it's because I said so. Don't question it. In fact, it's like, stop asking why. You don't ask why. You just do it.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I saw somebody post something on Facebook and they were like, parents, can you teach your kids that saying what to an adult is disrespectful?
What? Oh, damn it. I'm sorry. I was doing
You know what I mean? Like, when the kids are like, what? That kind of thing. I get it. It's annoying, right? Sure. Yeah. But it's like, why don't they respect you?
Right.
Like, anyways, it's a whole nother topic. But it's just that point of, it's like, okay, so you're Greg Abbott. You care. You want to help. Don't you think, like, that guy has won successful political campaigns? He has to understand how perception works and how when I say this happens. He's been the governor for some time. Like, he has to know when certain things are done, what happens.
Yeah.
He's not clueless. Yeah. And did he write the executive order?
Did he write? I don't think he wrote it. I'm sure he just signed it.
He did it. Somebody, like, who is the one writing it? That's what I want.
Yeah.
Like, there's a whole mechanism behind that. These people know that there's going to be an effect. So it's just like, if you wanted to support the whole point of anti-Semitism, wouldn't you just increase the education around it of like understanding things? Like, okay, so it's not the Jews, it's not the Davos elite, it's not whoever. So how do things work then?
Yeah.
Why is our border open? Why are there so many immigrants coming across?
Yeah. Yeah.
A good thing.
Say that last bit again.
Is it a good thing?
Is it a good thing? Yeah.
Is it gonna, like, can our system sustain that? It's like, oh, you just hate people because they're different than you. I'm like when I go to a Mexican restaurant, I'm not like, ugh, all these Mexicans in here. Like, I hate Mexicans. Like, if I hated them, why would I let them serve me food?
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? I know that sounds a little bit racist, like, oh, you'll let them serve you. But
No, that is
like,
like if you really hated them, you
you're
wouldn't.
walking around just in disgust of them.
Yeah. um, you know, I just remembered.
Okay,
Yeah.
and hold on. Even if that is like, okay, well, but there are racist people. Sure. They just hate people that look different than them and so forth. And that, okay, that's the, but the Jews are not like that, right?
Dude, you saw that video I sent you?
Yeah.
And it was that was like a
I
little
actually
short
saw
video.
that.
You saw that? That's
So you
from
know
four
what it
years
is?
ago.
It's the algorithm is trying to program us to be anti-Semitic. That's what's going on right now.
That's what must be happening. They're telling me everything is anti-Semitic, and then they're showing me all the anti-Semitic things, and they're like, "Don't say this. Also, don't say this. Also,
We'll talk
this."
about this, but check this out.
Yeah. Here, by the way, let me just slip this to you on the download. But yeah, no, it's interesting because that guy is just going around Israel and asking people, are non-Israelis or non-Jews equal? Do you see them as equal? And a good amount of people said yes, but even those people who were saying yes were like, okay, so they should vote, right? No, no, no.
Right. Yeah, I only watched part of it. I actually had seen it before you sent it to me, so I didn't watch it again. But like, I
Okay.
only saw a few being like, yeah, they're the same as us and all that. But tell me about the ones who were like, no, because you're saying there were some who were like, no, they shouldn't vote.
Because okay, there were some that were saying like, hey, are they the same as us? And they're like, yeah, yeah, they're the same. And then like the person right next to them would be like, no, they're slightly different. Oh, different in what way? Well, we're God's chosen people, and so we're different. Like, oh, does that make us better? Like, no, just we're chosen, so we're different. And then other
Chosen meaning what?
just chosen. They have a mission to bring forward for God, right? And then the other ones were saying like, well,
Doesn't it seem weird though? Like you're the chosen people of God, and yet everybody hates you.
no, that's part of that's part of being chosen by God.
I'd
But
be like, choose someone else, dude.
but also that's a big piece of Christianity as well, that you will be persecuted. You know, like that's a given. So being
Exactly.
chosen,
Now they're
being
like, oh, the Christians are the ones that are persecuted, not the Jews. It's like, okay, so we're gonna have a fight over who's the bigger victim here.
yes,
It's like, yeah, you've been victimized by reality, not anybody else. It's like, look at the fucking world, dude.
right, right.
Why do you care? You accept Jesus. What do you care if you're persecuted then? Like, what does it mean? What does it even matter?
Yeah,
Jesus died for your sins. You accept him. Move on. What does it matter now?
yeah.
Anything. What does anything matter at this point? You're
And
gonna
that
die by the time at least you're 90 or something. Jesus is you're who what does it fucking matter? What does anything matter?
Yeah, and that's the important part. I would assume it's funny because I would assume somebody listening to this who's like really leftist leaning would be like so confused. They'd be so confused. They'd be like, "Yeah, I agree with that. So what does it matter if you're like trans or anything like that?" Like, well, it matters because the impact that it has on the children, the next generation, and like your quality of life, all of it, right? You're obviously
Well, when I say
confused.
what does it matter, I mean it rhetorically, like if you're a Christian and you are saved by Jesus and all that, like, isn't that what matters?
there's a
How does
cool,
it affect your reality here? It only affects your reality if you then enact Christian laws.
yeah.
For what? Like, so then more people can accept Christ, or like what? So you can have police that walk around and make sure you only do Christian things. Like, what?
So obviously the reality there would be like, they don't have to be Christian laws. They just have to be laws that are like actually what is best. That's
That's
it.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know that's what you're saying. I'm just clarifying. But one thing that was said that I heard that was
But
really
that should,
interesting.
God,
What
it's fine.
was this point of um in the Bible, there's a verse that says, um, through fear and trembling, you will reach salvation on your own. Work out your own salvation. Work out your own salvation through fear and trembling. And I just think that's a really cool like point right there. To work out your own salvation through fear and trembling means what? It's like you can't depend on like, oh, God's going to be my salvation, right? Even in their literature, right? It says you can't just be like, oh, well, like God's just going to fix everything, right? And also though, within the context of where we are in process, what is salvation in terms of process? It's like having a world that's best, like a salvation from our own abuse, like actually stopping our own abuse of ourselves, our own abuse of this world, of humanity, of the animals, of every living being, of everything here. We're abusing all the resources that are here. Abuse being like we have the resources to end hunger, to end, the unsanitary conditions that people are born into. We have literally the resources to do that, but we abuse it by not effectively bringing them to those people that are in need and
The,
sharing that with everyone.
the argument is that if we accept Christ, then we would make the world better. But that ship has sailed, man.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
and
Wait, hang on. I like that you said that. I like that you said that ship has sailed because it's the same point of um, we were gods and now we can no longer be gods because we fucked that up.
yeah, God's in the sense of like some kind of all powerful fucking mold reality, like with your instant thought kind of shit, like
Yeah,
no, now we got to be like these lowly fucking creatures and work together. And we're thinking somehow, you know what Christianity is? It's like, no, I can somehow get that back somehow. I can, or
can't
I
go
can
back.
it's still there and it can come to me and I can be saved by it. It's like, it's over. It's gone.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's done. It's not, it doesn't exist anymore.
It's like 9/11 or COVID. You can't go back. You can't go back. Like after 9/11, do you remember traveling before 9/11? Like your people who weren't even getting on the plane could go into the airport with you, go all the way up to the gate, you know, and they could be waiting for you when you got off the plane, like, oh, hey, there you are. And like, all that stuff. And then after 9/11, that's like, that's done. That's done. In fact, immediately after 9/11, it was like there were people with, you know, M4s walking around, like, it was completely changed. And sure, we got back from, okay, now that you don't see so many military guys in the airports anymore, but still it's completely changed from what it was before. In the same way with COVID, they said this is going to be bigger than 9/11 and how it's going to change things. And it did. And there, okay, and looking at this whole religion thing, it's completely changed. You can't go back to that. That's done. Like there is no going back to normal. Oh, can't we just go back to normal when everything wasn't anti-Semitic? No, that's over.
Like, can we just go back to before there was the internet? And it's like,
Yeah,
we're going to
no,
have to learn how to live within it. And yes, there's a lot of problems, but that's because we're not addressing the problems. And we're trying to go back to something. Um,
let me just say this real quick because there's also this whole thing with the CBDC that's coming,
sure.
right? And like, and that's going to be the next new normal thing. If 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 no one stands up,
It's not even an if, dude.
Yeah,
it's
it's
done.
happening.
Like,
It's happening. But I'm saying like there's going to be more and more and more controls. Obviously, that's what's happening. There's more and more and more controls being placed on people, and we're just seeing the next evolution. It's like, hey, it's time to stand up. It's time to do something.
Yeah, the standing up is the first point is walk this process. That's like there's no other, because like if you think about it, if you're a Christian and you said we got to stand up as Christians and do what?
Yeah.
Fight with each other, fight with other religions. Like what when we say stand up, the first point is walk this process, use these tools.
Yeah.
Share them with others. And that's the part where the Christians are facing right now. Because it's like, well, if I share my Christianity, that could be anti-Semitic. And it's like, because what you're sharing is biased.
Yeah.
And it is a threat to someone else's thing. And there's no common sense in it.
Yeah.
And you can't prove it.
Yeah.
You can't find common ground because someone either accepts your Lord and Savior or they reject it.
Right.
So you've basically set yourself against the rest of the world. It's like saying, I can only be your friend if you like the color red, if it's your favorite color. Because my favorite color is red and yours has to be red as well. And if you're saying red isn't the best color, we can't get along.
Yeah.
But your whole identity is around your favorite color is blue.
Right.
I'm like, well, you're going to have to just accept red's the best color. And it's like, it's not. It's just a fucking color. Yeah. It's not real. The colors aren't even fucking real.
Yeah.
They're just an artifact of your perception. So what are you arguing about? The whole point about Christianity, if everyone accepted Jesus as their savior and did it, okay, here's the thing. Let's say two Christians can, you can say Christ is king. That's a fact, right?
Sure.
You listen to that 4-hour fucking call, right?
Yes.
Where all these different perspectives, right? And wasn't there some who were like, yes, Christ is king, but we shouldn't use it as anti-Semitism and use it against people. And some people were like, Christ is king, and we should say it no matter what, and it is not anti-Semitic. And like, and we should be Christians by being loving and embracing others and not being aggressive and so forth. No, we should be aggressive and we should do this. And they can't even, two people who agree on the quote fact that Christ is God and Savior and King can't agree on what it actually means to live their faith.
Yeah.
So how is getting everybody to accept Jesus a solution?
Yeah.
Because even within the people who do, they can't even agree on what it actually means to live it because it's not spelled out in detail. When you look at our principles, they're spelled out in detail.
Yeah.
Now, what is everything else around destiny? To understand how the mechanics of your mind and your ego and your feelings and thoughts and all of that, how that works. And at the end of the day, it's about being self-honest and walking your process of self-honesty. That's it. Because then you're like, well, then what? Then it's all of us collectively walking this process, developing the ability to speak to each other and utilize common sense and say what is actually best in every situation. And is it going to look the same in every situation?
No.
Like the way you grow tomatoes here in East Texas is not going to work in Arizona or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but does that mean there's not in that context, something that is best?
Right.
Versus you might say, well, but you're saying it depends, right? Okay. But now let's say you're a company and all you care about is making money. Mm-hmm. You're growing tomatoes in Texas or you're growing them in Arizona. You're not even considering what is best. You're considering how can I make this the cheapest possible, get the most money.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Perfect example of that is that stuff with Boeing.
With what?
Boeing.
Oh, yeah.
Is it like, what is actually best? Or is it, how can we just cut our costs, make money? If you blow the whistle on our safety procedure, doesn't matter because we don't have the money to make it better. And it's like, you know what I mean? There's no consideration of what would actually be best here.
Right.
So it's an example. And the thing is, you can't specifically define every single thing that is best because it's going to take the person who's in the context of directing it to figure that out by applying these principles. And if you were able to boil down the best parts of any religion or any faith or any spirituality, you would come up with these principles that we have.
Yeah.
And so, do you need Jesus to give them validity? Do you need Jesus to say whether it makes sense to be homosexual or not? Do you need Jesus to make sense whether, or do you need Jesus to tell you whether a child should get trans therapy or some shit, or gender affirming care? Do you need Jesus? Where does it say that in the Bible?
Right.
I don't know of anything that talks about it. It's like, well, it says man was born, male and female or whatever. And it's like, but it's not going to spell everything out for you.
Right.
Clearly they're taking that and then using logic and reasoning to apply it in a certain situation.
Yeah.
But then you can have some Christians who don't do that, because it's in a way very specific and yet ambiguous at the same time.
It's interesting. That's like laws. You'll have some lawyers or judges who will read to the letter of the law, right? And so well, this is exactly what it says. And then there's others who are like, well, this is the spirit of the document, right? And so like, the right to like militia, the right to bear arms, right? Like, well, okay, but you can only have these arms, and you can't use it against the government.
You can have an aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
Well, then what justifies the government to have it?
Right.
Where does it say in there the government can have one?
Yeah. Well, obviously we can.
Well, the spirit of the law is that like, where does it say a lot of things?
Right. Yeah.
It certainly doesn't say and in 2024 it is rightful for the president to declare Easter the national day of trans whatever visibility.
Dude. Okay. So just to this point of like the laws are changing for free speech.
Much like our gender.
Just like our genders. Not my gender. Well, I don't have a gender actually.
Okay, it's a fact that the Holocaust happened, but it's not a fact that your son was born a male.
Yeah, that can change.
And what's funny is I think there's people who believe both.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is Owen Benjamin's whole anti-Semitism stemmed from, if you go back, because I remember seeing him in Houston at the beginning of him getting canceled.
Yeah.
And he was getting and the reason I went to go see him is because he was the only person I could see was like talking about the trans stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy's interesting. So that's why I decided to go see him, right? The only reason Katie didn't go is because we had, I think it was either Max and Seneca, I can't remember, but we had little kids, right? So we couldn't take them, right? Mm-hmm. And his whole anti-Semitism thing started with the going against the trans stuff.
Yeah.
That?
Yeah. No, I remember.
Interesting. It wasn't like he started off talking about Jews and stuff.
Right. So just that point though of like, okay, it's now getting written into laws where for right now you can't do this on college campuses, but it's limiting speech much in the same way where our right to bear arms is limited in many ways, right? And it's just going to become a war of attrition essentially, where it's just like, bit by bit, your rights are going to be taken away from you. And then the next generation, they're going to be like, oh, well, do we really need to have this? Okay, well, let that go too. And that's what I'm seeing is
okay.
They are coming for free speech for sure.
I know you have to go soon too. But I'll just make this point, and then if you want to add anything. That comment about why do the communist, Marxist, leftist, whatever the hell you want to call it, first of all, most people are just useful idiots. Mm-hmm. There's like the system, which utilizes any point of desire or fear that you have to get you to spread something, right? So the average leftist, why do they want, or even the academic ones, why do they want open borders? Why do they want the destabilization of the nuclear family? And it comes down to, when you look at the literature, it destabilizes the capitalist system. Mm-hmm. They want capitalism to fall because then it becomes communism, right?
Yeah. And
I think the average person probably thinks, oh, because then we can all own everything. We can have a great life. We can have a great society where there's no private property, and we all then will work together. And it's like this peace and harmony idea, which is not real because the average person is programmed with fear and survival. So if communism was possible, would already exist right now. If it was possible to just remove capitalism and then suddenly communism would exist in the ideal state, it would already exist that way because
sure.
nobody would go along with things as they are then.
Yeah.
Because the problem is the education level and the vocabulary level of the average person. The ability to process information unbiased is not there. Yeah. So we can't have a direct democracy right now.
Yeah.
So being like, well, if we get rid of this two-party system, nothing would change because the only way the two-party, you say, oh, it's the two-party system that's the problem. No, dude, because listen to what the two-party people are saying. They're saying retarded shit and people are buying into it.
Yeah.
It's not the two-party system that's the problem. It's the fact that people buy into stupid, retarded shit.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? That's the problem because if they didn't buy into that shit, you wouldn't buy into the two-party system.
But people will say, well, it's because those are the only choices that they're given, so they have to make a choice. Like, no.
If someone said, would you like this shit sandwich or this fucking snot pie? I'd be like, no, thank you. I won't be eating.
You want snot pie?
You know what I'm saying, though? It's like, you would have like, well, it's the only choices I have. I guess I have to eat something. It's like, no, dude. Okay, but I'll make this point real quick. So yeah, you can see all these points are about like destabilize capitalism, it falls, and then we can have communism. Now, if you look at the system's like, yeah, destabilize it, get it to the point where we can just have the communist point, which is literally just the few elite who fucking own everything can just control everybody through technology. That's what's happening. So you have the useful idiots that are like, oh, but then we'll have this amazing communism and so forth, where everyone's free to be yourself and everything. And there's, but the reality of it is it's like it's the full evolution of the system having absolute total control. If everything collapses, everyone goes into fear.
Yeah.
You will just accept, okay, there's no food. Okay, fuck it. Bill Gates, take the farmland, do what you need to do. Give us the crickets, burgers. I don't care. Make it taste good. I don't care. You know what I mean? Trans my kid, whatever. I don't care because I just need to survive.
Yeah.
You say, well, people wouldn't do that. They already accept all kinds of bullshit just to survive.
Yeah.
They won't stand up. So the only solution to that is not, well, if everyone accepted Jesus, they're retarded Christians who will say all of the right things. I believe Jesus. And you can have 3 different people who be like, no, you don't believe it because you don't do this. But the 3 different people disagree on what is this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't, it's too open to interpretation. It's not based on common sense. It's based on belief. It's based on the quote reality of something that isn't real.
Yeah.
So there's no solution in it. The only solution is for every single person to walk this process and to develop common sense. So when we're talking to each other, we're understanding each other because we both see the point. Not just because we both accepted a belief in something. Because 2 Christians can go, hey, we both believe in Jesus. Sweet, we're on the same side. And then suddenly they find they disagree with each other. How is that possible?
Yeah.
Because the thing that you're agreeing on is the most vague, non-realistic thing.
Yeah.
Versus what is for all. That's a very concrete point. And you might not know at this very moment in every context how to apply it, but it's very concrete because you can say, well, the goal is what's best. Is there any point that we can determine that is not best here? I mean, that's how we can apply they said the tide is turning on public opinion for Israel. Mm-hmm. We were definitely ahead of that curve. Right?
Yeah.
Back when everyone was like, of course they have a right to, and it's like, now everyone's like, well, okay, maybe they're going too far. It's like, I can see that from the very fucking beginning.
Yeah.
Because you don't even have to know what Israel's going to do or what they did to already know the whole thing is fucked.
Right.
And it's like, why are there people in poverty? And it's like, because we've been saying that this whole time. So you just look at that situation. Are there people in poverty? Not best.
Yeah. And we know that there are people in poverty because the system wants it that way. Because if there are people in poverty, that means there are people to just take advantage of and use for your purposes.
The problem is the system is defeating itself right now.
It's a lot like these
and that's not a good thing for any of us. Yeah. Like, oh, great, the system's collapsing. That's what you want, right? No, Like I said in the beginning, you want to build a house. You don't want to burn your house down and be like, well, I don't have anywhere to live now. Of course, I'm going to build a house with my neighbors. Like, and you're starving.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to do that. People will just go into fear.
Yeah.
Because if they wouldn't, then they wouldn't be going along with everything already. Because if you talk to the average person and you share them these points that we're talking about, they'll immediately go into fear of survival. And it's like, well, all the fears come up. And that's really this process that we have to walk through, is eliminating all the fear, which is all the doubt, which is all the inequality. And when you really bring it down, one of the major problems with these laws is it's like, no, we're not all equal. You can't talk shit about Jews.
Yeah.
Why not? Because we're chosen. That's not equality. Does that mean you should hate them? No. But everybody needs to balance and realize we're all literally equal. Doesn't mean we're the same, but we are equal. You can't have chosen people.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a valid point. That doesn't justify you harming someone because they're claiming they're chosen. We have to support everyone who believes I am chosen or I am special for any reason, whether it's because you accept Jesus or whatever. Realize it doesn't make you special. We're all equal. We have to consider what is best.
Yeah.
I know it's time, so we'll leave it at that.
All right, yeah. Well,
Christ is King.
Happy Easter. Happy Trans Visibility Day. Yeah. And we'll see you on the next Trans Visibility Day.
Bye.
Bye.